Clap Street's back. All right. In fact, I have that level of creativity at 8:40 in the morning to use. Was it the Backstreet Boys?
Yeah.
That was Backstreet Boys.
Of course, because it's Clap Street as opposed to Backstreet. Well, it's back. And, last week we tried out a guy. He edited some audio. He sat in the room and listened. It kind of reminded me, and when I say reminded me, it didn't remind me at all because I've never done this. But, maybe I've watched a pornography movie before with some cuckolding in it. But that's kind of, like he was kind of just sitting there watching. Don't you feel it's weird when we don't include all the parties in the TeamSpeak channel, or is that, I'm not doing a Twitter Spaces or whatever it is where people join and I can select the speakers. It just felt a bit strange.
I see what you mean. I didn't get that impression at all, but now that you mention it,
do you think he felt cuckolded?
I think he was loving it, man. He got a front row seat.
All right. Well, that's the main
He was
thing.
like in the closet, man, unzipping his pants. He was having a good time with things.
I was going to say,
hell?
I did hope that...
He didn't even get a chair.
You
That wasn't
started
the
this
case.
metaphor.
I thought he'd get a chair. I didn't know this is in the closet.
I wonder where Chad was going with this, but, funny story about Backstreet Boys. Well, I don't know if it's a funny story. It's more of an embarrassing story, or maybe not.
Is Backstreet Boys related to cuckolds at all, or is this like a bridge too far?
I think we've moved on from that.
Oh, okay.
I think Janko got us past that.
All right, that was
No, it's
nice,
like,
Janko.
so when I was, what was it like?
When
let's
I
say-
was a young boy, my father took me into the city
Is that still
to
Backstreet
see
Boys?
No, is that Green Day?
I have no idea who that
I'm
is.
sorry,
I
Janko,
thought
it's my
I thought
morning
you were just
energy.
making
No,
that up.
it's great, man. I love it.
Yeah,
Keep bringing
sorry.
the energy,
Sorry.
We probably all sound a little bit different. I know I do. But when I was like
yeah.
14, 15, I went to like, college, or it's like to the UK for a 2-week sort of intensive language course, right? At one of these places, doesn't matter. And they do like all kinds of activities, right? You could choose between whatever, some sports.
Was there rock
some-
climbing?
No,
No
but
rock
basically
climbing. All right.
everything except for that. And
Alright.
then there was obviously at the end of the thing, you're supposed to do a sort of a performance. It was like separated, boys and girls, and the boys had to like do a sort of a performance of "I Want It That Way" by Backstreet Boys.
Oh shit! Okay.
So we all were like
I
wearing jeans and tank tops, white tank tops, and we
Is
were
there
doing
video
like
of this?
Absolutely
say,
not.
There has to
Absolutely
be video of this.
because this was before like smartphones and all.
So was
of
this
that
with
shit.
school? It was with school.
Yeah, it was like
So either
St.
it'd be an
Edmunds College or
excursion,
something like that.
it'd be an excursion, or it would be like considered
No, because this was
like
like,
a camp.
Yeah, like a camp basically.
Which is weird because camping's usually associated with being in the outdoors. But we would go on some camps, but we wouldn't go like. It's crazy that your camp, you guys are like, yeah, we're gonna go to the UK. In Australia, we'll go like, yeah, we're gonna go for like a 4-hour drive down to, I don't know.
No, but it's like, this English school I was going to, they had that offer, right? Like it was
part of the
relatively
package.
expensive at the time, so you could like pay for that. It was during the summer. It wasn't like a part of the
Oh,
normal
I see.
activities.
It's like what my sister did Japanese lessons in school, and then as part of it, in a certain grade they got to, they actually went to Japan, and they had like a fucking exchange student thing. I had a while of my life where there was just this Japanese girl living in my house as part of like this exchange.
So that's where the anime love comes from.
Well, that's the thing. I didn't even. I was at such a point in my life. Like I think because my sister's 3 years younger than me, right? And I think was either finishing high school or I had just finished high school. So one of the two. So I had my own shit going on, and I was always just engrossed in Counter-Strike. So I barely saw anybody in my life at that point anyway. I just know that there was a period of time. I forget her name. I wonder if my sister remembers her.
Yeah, but come on. She must have been fucking stuck in the washer at least once.
Bloody hell. Like I said, Janko, I was so like fucking busy with other shit, man. I was so just like, at that time of life, when I was
for
in the
fuck's
teen
sake.
years, the obsession wasn't with the women. It was just with the Counter-Strike. I didn't really care about anything else, to be honest.
Chad, I don't think
Hell
there was
yeah.
ever a point in your life when you were obsessed by women, or actually when you were obsessed by anything other than Counter-Strike. So
I'm trying to think.
that
there
point of
definitely
your
has been
life
some
is still
times.
going on.
I
I
miss
had
those
like
days.
micro obsessions, I reckon, before that when I was growing up. Like there'd be fads of things, but they never like stuck. Or
Like
lasted.
yo-yos.
Well, I didn't do the yo-yo. Did you? I think
Okay.
I was a bit young for the yo-yo.
We had a yo-yo fad.
Yeah?
And when I was growing up, we had a pog fad. Did you guys have pogs?
I know
Oh,
of
this is
pogs.
really
They came in
dating me.
bags of crisps or chips, depending on where you're listening. At
Okay.
one point, so yeah, they came in bags like that. But we never like. I don't remember buying pogs.
I just did the standard camps. I had the traditional camping experience that you were touching on, Chad. The actual.
You're an
the actual
outdoorsman.
Hey, you
That
were a
makes
Boy
sense for
Scout,
you.
weren't you, little
Yeah.
shit?
Yeah, for a little bit, but I got out of that shit early. I was
Well,
like,
that
this
explains
is
why
fucking
you can
dumb.
tie a good knot, Jason.
Yeah.
So you didn't get
I
any
can tie a
badges?
good knot.
No, but didn't they teach you in like Boy Scouts how to do that shit?
I didn't make it to that level. I did more of the stupid Boy Scout stuff. The coolest thing we
Oh.
did was
You
like
just got to the
Homewood-
don't eat
the
them up
Pinewood
level.
Derby. Yeah.
Pinewood
I got out
Derby,
quick.
okay.
Yeah, we take a little block of like pine wood, and you'd have to like carve a car out of it, and then you'd kind of race it with the rest of the troop. But I got out of that at a young age. I didn't stick around in Boy Scouts
sounds
and
like
go
fun.
for any kind of thing. It wasn't bad. But no, I did
I feel
the
like we
I
miss
did like
a lot of activities like that.
Yeah, we do. A lot of hands-on activities. Everything's on the PC these days. But no, I
Yeah.
did like a 10-day camping and canoeing trip in Canada. Did like a 2-week hiking trip in like an island in the middle of Lake Superior, Isle Royale for a bit. So I did like the true outdoorsy camping.
Yeah.
But it's
That's
a
my
bit
camp
weird
experience.
because you think about it now. Like, there's two ways of thinking about that shit. One is like it's completely useless, like learning how to use a compass or something like that, and like basic orienteering, if that's the word.
Yeah, yeah.
And some of those skills, right? You're thinking like,
Cartography.
"Ah, man, when are you ever going to be in that situation?" Or blah 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 blah. There's smartphones. You have a compass on your iPhone, I think. You had it on your
You can
Android.
configure it, I'm pretty sure. Right? It's that thing where you used to. This is how Boomerang used to do like the figure
Yeah, but
eights and-
you won't have it when the apocalypse
Yeah, I
hits.
know. So, but here's the other thing. It's right. Like, if actually
True.
something happens, right? Let's say World War III starts, and you want to run to the woods, so you're
I
safe.
can't wait for the
from
notice on
radiation.
Spotify to be like this conversation may contain
Misleading
information about World
disinformation.
War III.
Like,
like,
this will probably get us banned from YouTube again because I will say a sequence of words,
yeah,
random
just not
words in
meant to
like
go
3
together.
sentences. They're not meant to go together.
Yeah.
And then it would be like if we were dropped now in the middle of the woods, like we probably wouldn't be able to survive as a grown ass man.
Well, if we got
in our
Jason with
peak
us, man, I
years.
think we'll be okay.
And that's like
I could keep us alive for at least a week.
and that's like
I reckon.
pretty embarrassing.
Yanko,
you know?
I reckon we'd shape up pretty quick. I have the opposite opinion of the whole thing. Like, I know it seems somewhat delusional, but I think the human body is pretty resilient. I don't think we're very well trained or versed in needing to do that level of exercise on a daily basis to survive, of just general like lifting and walking and gathering and hunting and or
No,
you
but-
know any.
But
anything
it's
like
not about the
that.
physical exercise. It's like we would probably take the poison berries instead of
Oh,
like
yeah.
the
yeah, but
edible
I don't
ones.
know, dude. Like, I feel this is the thing. How many times you had a fucking? I don't actually. Maybe you didn't. You didn't watch a lot of it. Like, I don't know. I couldn't like it practically go and do it. But in a worst case scenario, like in the world type thing, they feel like there are a couple of moves which are safer than others. If I was in the jungle and there were snakes and spiders and shit everywhere, yeah, okay, we're probably dead. But if we're in the woods with Jason, Jason's telling us we're probably going to get eaten by a bear. And other than that, what else are we got to worry about, Jason? A couple of coyotes. What are they?
No, we'd
Mountain
fucking
lions?
die. We'd fucking die. We could get a good week or two in, but we'd fucking die.
We had
for
fun.
sure.
We had fun for a week.
Are we going to a shelter first, a fire first? Like, what are we
I'm
doing
just
first?
saying, we would die for sure.
I'm always curious
Uh,
about like a zombie apocalypse time. That'll be different, and I wonder how it's going to spread. That's what I always think about. Is like because it's
Well,
not
we
going
had
to
a test
start
run the
everywhere.
past 2 years, so
Yeah, well, we know where it's it popped off pretty close to where I'm near, right, in Italy. So
did you guys know? Do you know about this movie Contagion?
I
Yeah.
do know about it. Yeah,
Did you watch it?
I did.
No.
But yeah, just a quick it's like a movie from 2011,
Yep.
and it's almost
It's basically COVID.
It's basically COVID. Like the plot is basically COVID.
We're definitely getting flagged for this one.
And it's a fun movie because it's like an ensemble movie, right? So you have
Yeah.
a ton of famous actors doing
Matt
different
Damon's in that
roles.
bad boy.
Bryan Cranston is in
You
it.
love some famous actors, don't you?
I
They
think
go a long
Gwyneth
way.
Paltrow is in it.
Yep, she is. Kate Winslet, Bryan Cranston, Lawrence Fishburne. I pulled it up. Jude Law's in
Yeah,
that
like
bad
you don't know
boy.
this on the top of your head. Yes.
Yeah, no, that movie's good. I watched it during lockdown, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually really weird. That this is what this
Yeah,
is
me
what the
too.
movie
I was
is."
freaked out. But I think, do you think this is like we're entering our middle age crisis? You know, it's like when.
What, as a society?
No, us three. But like when you talk about like, you know, like,
Let's go
I want to
real.
build shit with my hands, you know, and like all that stuff. Where you feel
I just
like,
think
I
your
wanna-
focus on things changes at some point, right? Like when you're super busy with one thing, when you're obsessed on something, or your brain is like taking you in one direction to learn a certain, I don't know, repertoire of things, right? Like you're going to move away from certain other things. And
Yeah.
we have jobs that are mainly on computers or looking at screens, right? Either playing, watching, or talking about Counter-Strike is essentially our focus. You're keeping up with a lot of different matches. Like you're reading the news articles that are coming out. You're watching the content. You're formulating your own opinions and views on things. And I guess because of that, in our lifestyle, that you kind of move away from doing the more outdoor stuff. But I look at like some of Jason's stories, and he's outside all the time. You know, he's got the fucking dogs. He's out there. It looks nice. He's renovating. He's doing bits and
chopping
bobs.
wood.
Yeah, right. Jason's still doing shit. I want to
The-
be doing more shit. Everything, nothing of mine is fucked. Maybe
You
I should
have
go
no
fuck
woods
some
to
stuff
chop in
up, so I
mountain.
have to fix it. That's true. I
Yeah.
can't chop any wood either. When it's sunny here, though, in like when I come back from this next string,
You could fish.
that's when it's I can swim. That's when I go out every morning for a quick walk. Well, it's not really a quick walk.
And that's a nice setup with the morning swims in Malta.
Yeah.
I was doing that in the summer, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually a beautiful way to start the day.
Yeah,
Quick
do it,
run,
start every
hop
day.
in the water, get to relax a little bit, get some ocean on your skin, sea, whatever you want to call it over there."
Well, here it's a sea.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Whatever you want to call it. It's not about wanting to call it.
It's the
what it
official
is.
terminology. He does. It's early, Janko. This is the thing, and we need to get to this.
I
And-
corrected myself because I did this last time in Malta, and Chad corrected me like 3 times over the course of the.
Well, it's
I called
important.
it- I
You're
called
like
it the ocean, and he
because
was like,
that's
"No,
what-
it's a sea.
That's
it's a
what
sea."
I'd do, Jason. I'd call it the ocean, but I've understood now that in this part of the world, it's the sea.
Okay.
Like it is actually the sea. It's based off of geography, how the body of water is well, it's not landlocked, right? But it's surrounded by. I don't know how it fucking works. What defines a sea? I
Yeah, the
wanted to know-
definition of sea versus ocean has got to be like.
Here we go. In terms of geography, seas are smaller than oceans and usually located where the land and ocean meet. Typically, seas
Yeah,
are
but-
partially enclosed by land. There you go.
Okay,
Yeah,
well that's very
it's
vague.
being
'cause,
enclosed by land is the big.
I thought I
big
was
part.
pretty good with the definition. I thought I was fucking.
Well, yeah, but the sea just like turns into the ocean at some point, right? So
Yeah,
they have
well,
like
it
a
has
line
to.
on the map of being like where this is now no longer the sea.
Well, don't start this, Jason, because someone's going to go and screenshot a picture of the sea and go, well, this is why it's called the fucking sea, Jason.
Well, it's usually a.
Okay.
There's usually a strait, like the Gibraltar Strait is where the Mediterranean, I guess, the Mediterranean flows into the Atlantic Ocean.
This is Learning with Chad, Janko, and Jason in the mornings.
Welcome to a Counter-Strike podcast.
Well, the thing that we need to get to right now, and I do love it when we bang on about random shit and just have a conversation because it's fun. However, Jason, we have to fill everybody in on a bit of a timeline here because you've done some jumping across the pond, aka ocean, not the sea, to a new land, and you had some.
Also, I'm looking at a map right now, and actually, it makes entirely sense for the Mediterranean Sea turns into the ocean. So we'll just move past that. But yeah,
Okay.
I'm
glad
in
we
London
could
right
park
now. I flew into London yesterday.
For some fish and chips.
Now, what
First-
time
yeah, just
yesterday
for
did
fish
you
and
land?
chips.
Because this timeline right now, I want everyone to think about: is it Jack Bauer? I'm talking about 24.
Yes.
Jack Bauer, yeah.
Okay,
That's
so
an
this
amazing
is
show. I love
Jason.
Jack Bauer.
Jason leaves home, and then the thing blinks, and it's Jason Bauer. There's a new character,
Yeah.
Jason. We've got Jason Rogaine, and we've got Jason Bauer.
Jason Bauer.
These are
That's not
two
bad.
characters for some Pro League skits. All right.
Ooh, yeah, I like the Jason Bauer one. I can nail that.
Now the timer starts. You're leaving.
yeah.
What time are you leaving home?
I left home. I went to the airport at around 3:45. My flight was at 5:15. And I flew to Atlanta, had a little bit of a layover there, then flew to London, landed in London at like 11:45, 11:30
So
in the
11:45
morning
on Wednesday
on
morning.
Wednesday.
Now,
Yep.
just we don't now. There's like a flashback cut scene, Jason. What we when everyone with me now, flash, it's black and white. It's like a little date
And you hear
scroller
the,
comes
you hear
up.
the TikTok.
Yeah, it's like Tuesday. Whatever. What would be your time? I don't know, but whatever. Like time comes up, and it's you sitting at your computer with the baby there, and you're about to do what, Jason? The night before. Well, maybe not the night before, but the day before at your computer.
Oh, I was casting. I had woken up that morning. I was actually casting Wednesday before going to the airport. I was casting the crazy party.
This is stressful. So you've gone casting with the baby, new at home. Everything's popping off into a flight.
Into a
now
flight.
So you've gone from working into working. Now
Yeah.
you've landed. It's 11 something in the morning on yesterday, Wednesday. What comes next?
Yeah. I get my bags. I go through passport control, swap those passport control into getting bags, then hop in a taxi, and then I'm sat in a taxi for a little, like right around an hour going to the hotel.
Miserable
Get to-
London traffic. That's what you need to be
Yeah,
expecting.
it was 10 miles away, and it took an hour to get there because fucking London. Yeah, and then I got to the hotel right around 1:45 in the afternoon, and I hopped on a call with you boys.
Oh, that's true. That did happen. That
Yep,
did happen.
straight from the hotel. We hopped
so
on a
Janko,
call.
we're going to feature in this episode of Jason Bauer, just so you know.
Yeah,
Nice.
have
we
a
need
cameo.
character names
That was
for
my
you
dream.
guys. So we had a little meeting about the podcast. We had a call, and that lasted like an hour and a half, 2 hours ish. We were chatting.
I didn't time
right
it.
up until 4. I didn't time it either, but I think I got off like right around 4. I took like a 20-minute nap and then a shower, and then I had a film crew show up at the hotel to do some recording of the day in the life of
Look
a
at this guy.
commentator's hotel room.
Look at this guy, Janko. What is going on here?
And then me and the
We
film
got some
crew.
McConaughey type action going on with this
Yeah,
guy. A bit of
this was
Brad
intense.
Pitt bombs. Okay.
Yeah, then we went. Me and the film crew went, hopped on the tube, hopped on the underground, took a couple stops.
Oh,
and
you're
filming
even
on the
talking
underground.
like them over there.
Yeah, I know. I've got all the lingo. It's great.
Did you cause any
went-
disruptions filming in public in such a boisterous place like London, Jason?
No, unfortunately, we didn't. I wanted to. There was a guy on a megaphone
But
preaching
you
about
wanted to
Jesus.
find trouble.
I just wanted to call. I just wanted to make something happen. Spice up the content. I wanted to I don't even know. I wanted to get into a shouting match with the Jesus man on the megaphone. I thought that would have been fun.
I think you
He's in
should
a
just.
big-
I
he's in
think
a
you
big
really.
robe.
Yeah, but God is
Jason,
on his side. You wouldn't win.
Please just
True.
stay safe while you're out there on the streets, mate. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I didn't do it. I wanted to. I thought it would have been funny.
Even
I
the
thought it would
thought
make-
alone. Let's not have those dark.
You know
thoughts.
how it goes, Chad. You got to think about content and everything you do these days. You got to think about what it's
Yeah,
going to
but-
look like on the camera.
If you're interacting with random strangers on the train, that is probably at the point of which you've made a bad decision.
True.
Like where does this go right in any country, right? When I was growing up, even like so in Perth, it's probably changed a little bit now, but there was just like very seldom train lines, and they were just straight. There wasn't a lot of stops, and where you got off was still like at least a half an hour to 45-minute walk from your house, if not more. So like the train, not like it was mega direct, but I remember there was trains out to certain areas, and they just had these individuals who they were kind of loitering on the train. They'd graffiti. I think the technical terminology that they used to use back in the day was tagging.
Yeah. There's some
and-
graffiti on the underground.
Yeah, they
for
would
sure.
they would usually be young youths, and maybe they would be loitering around, making a bit of a scene. might be some consumption of things in areas that in Australia where you can smoke is quite specific. You know, maybe they're smoking where you shouldn't smoke, or smoking some wacky tobacco. Maybe even in more extreme cases, you know, sniffing some paint.
The devil's lettuce.
Well,
Sniffing
yeah.
some paint now.
So yeah, so
Huffing
you know,
glue.
To Anders.
there was always these types of these. Now, I wouldn't say they were common, right? You're not going to be doing, but you knew the areas in which these individuals would be at. So, do you feel you're in a safe area or an unsultry area?
Oh, I'm in a safe area. I'm in a very safe area.
Okay, can you say that with confidence?
Yeah, I'm as safe as anything. I'm in like King's Cross right now, so like, you know, it's like central London.
You're right next to the king.
Yeah, apparently.
Well, you have to understand.
It feels
Chad,
safe.
He's
Oh, yeah, it's the
Jason
king
Bauer.
now.
Like he's the one
Yeah.
who makes the area
That's
unsafe.
true. That's true. Okay, so we're at the timeline. He's now doing content on a train in the early evening, late afternoon. All right, and just remember, everybody, 24 hours prior to this, he was commentating with one young veteran for the Brazy party. Okay,
Yeah,
so cool. We've jumped forward in the timeline again. So now filming. What's next?
We're at the tube. We get off the tube. We arrive at the blast offices. And we get off the tube and head up and say hi to the people. And then immediately start setting up to cast the Brazy Party finals. So out of landing at the hotel and being in a 2-hour meeting and then recording with the
how
film
did that
crew.
go?
The technical issues were abound. There was some Wi-Fi situations at the offices that did not allow me to actually connect and cast the grand finals. However, I was meant to set up and cast the grand finals for 3 to 4 hours.
Now,
but
this is the
couldn't-
point in which the Jack Bauer cliffhanger comes in. I feel that this
Yeah.
was like, you know, we were building
There'd
to
be
this
a
without
commercial
knowing.
cut. There'd be
Yeah.
a commercial cut once I was on the laptop experiencing issues, and it would be like, oh shit,
I
this
feel
isn't working.
it's
and
all
then, boom,
keeping
black
cool.
screen.
Jason Bauer's coming in to like show like his prowess on the mic. He's walking in and he sits down and he goes to join, and TeamSpeak goes, or whatever the fuck goes, cannot connect to the IP, and then you camera shot your face, mouth agape, eyes wide. Oh no, ad break.
Bang, scene.
Yeah, and then now it's conflict resolution when we come out of that, right? So what's the conflict resolution here? You're fucked. Like you don't have the magic. You're
Yeah,
not
and-
an IT tech. Basically, you don't have the ability. Is what
And
the
I'm
problem is.
in a foreign environment, right? There's limits to the troubleshooting I could do.
That's
Blast
true.
staff
You're on foreign
had all left
soil.
at this point. Yeah, and I couldn't. There was no one at the office to help with the network
Fuck.
issues. Panic had a whole film crew set up. They wanted to grab some B-roll of me commentating, which was not
Oh,
looking like it was
dear.
gonna happen. Yeah, it was a situation. So yeah, couldn't fix the problem. Had to get on the blower. Called up Henry, and I said, Henry, I need you. You know, I need your help. I need you to strap up one last time for the Brazy party.
And I need you more than ever.
Exactly. And Henry
Yeah.
answered the fucking bell like a champion. He hopped on and he casted in my place. So then I, with this film crew there, pulled up a YouTube video of the highlights of the Brazy semifinal that I had casted before I got on the flight the day before. And I just recreated the moments, rechanneled the energy and emotions.
Yanko.
Chad is getting physically ill.
Oh, come on now.
It was an experience. Yeah, so I was
didn't-
listening to myself cast the day before and recreating the cast and the moments and just taking like snippets of highlights and just really trying to bang them out and give them some energy. Yeah.
Okay. And then, okay.
And then the day ended a little bit earlier than we expected. So I went out and had my first meal since the airplane breakfast. Actually, I didn't have a meal. I just had a a few drinks. There was no
He's
food
taking the
consumed.
edge off
Liquid
after a job well done. Jason Bauer saving the day, commentating to highlight because they
was
can't get the network to work.
Sat down and it was just like, oh, I deserve this. I really deserve this.
Jason Bauer, 24, and then the clock
I was
hits
on
0,
brand.
0.
I was on brand. I had some Jameson, you know, in honor of the major, in honor of a sponsor of the Blast TV Paris major. I had a couple glasses of Jameson.
A tough day at work. A nice Jameson on the rocks.
if you
I came back.
if you have been true to the character, you just had to, yell, "Damn it!"
Yeah, exactly. Damn it!
and then have a beer. And then
But
Fucking
yeah,
hell.
then I went and I passed out after a long day, and I set my alarm for 6:30 this morning.
Well, this is the
to,
next
to
episode.
do this
Today's
podcast.
the next episode.
This is the next episode.
Yeah.
Which is me
shit.
waking up at 6:30 this morning and saying, you know what, I haven't eaten in like 36 hours. Let me try and go to the breakfast. And it was a sit-down service. It's not a buffet. And I was like, you know what, I'm starting a podcast in about 45 minutes. I don't think I
How
have time
quick
to
can
sit
you
down.
bring out the food, yeah.
Yeah, so I just went and tried to make a coffee at the lobby, and the coffee machine was broken. So I had a glass of tea, and tea is absolute dog shit. I do not know what is wrong with tea drinkers in the world, but
no.
it's fucking bad.
You've just enraged like half of the English-speaking population.
Now,
I don't even care. I'm so when you need a coffee at 7 in the morning,
yeah,
and
but a
all
tea's
you can
not
have
a
is
coffee.
tea.
A tea's not a
all
coffee.
No, it's really
Wow.
depressing.
What
A
a
tea's just
statement.
a tea's a slightly nicer way to have water. That's what a tea is.
I guess, yeah.
And I would even argue that it's not even nicer. It's actually like a worse way to
Well,
have
I
water.
don't think that's true. I don't think all teas are equally as bad. It depends on the type of tea that you're looking for. There's plenty of different styles. We obviously have English breakfast. We have like the green tea varieties. You know, some people would like to get into a bit of a lemon and ginger tea. There's lots of
Yeah,
different
you know, when
flavors.
I'm
Tea's a whole
casting-
industry, Jason.
When I'm casting, I can have like a lemon and ginger tea. You know, I'm fine with that. That
Well, you've
helps.
just slandered all tea everywhere here. I'm not sure if
I'm
the
a little
outrage-
angry. I'm
it
a little
sounds
cranky
like you're
this morning.
cranky because yesterday you had to save the world with the staged casting, and today you have
And
to
I
be up
failed.
at 7:30 in the morning to do a podcast because you got more fucking recording to do, man.
Yeah, and
You're
then
a
after
busy,
this
you're a busy
podcast,
boy.
we're gonna do about an hour and a half, 2-hour podcast, and then I immediately got to hop
Well, you
in the
have to
shower.
do another podcast.
No. We're doing this podcast
Oh.
till about like 9:30, and then I hop in the shower,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then I got to go be at a studio at 10:30, and I'll be recording for 7 hours until 5:30.
But that was the point of this whole bit, was to basically say that you have a hard out and that we can't linger.
Okay, that's where we're going with this whole
Yeah,
Jack Bauer thing.
but I loved the bit that it turned into. You played it along really well. I feel that we built a bit of the drama,
Yeah.
and we pulled off what was a highly successful first episode of Jason Bauer. And now we know where we're at. The hard
That's the
out.
pilot.
And we have the
We've-
hard out, so we have maybe just over an hour remaining, and it is on the eve
of the major?
Yes.
I was just counting the eves. I think maybe I even miscounted the eves. But
yeah,
either,
it might be like the third Eve.
yeah, could be too many eves. Well, I think Adam never had a problem with that. Ayo.
Oh no, this is some of our best
Anyway,
work.
the Counter Strike, the fucking major, the Blast TV Paris CS:GO major. Fucking, it's happening.
Before we go balls deep into this, I just want to remind everyone of the blood oath we took in the previous episode.
to say what was
Yes,
what
to
was
not
the
talk
No-
about the format.
No
and-
format.
I
And
haven't
no
said
seating
anything about the
conversation.
format.
I
You
know. I just
fucking-
want to bring it up as a reminder that let's keep the steering wheel averted from those topics.
I'm here to remind you that we have limited time, Jason. If you're going to waste fucking words on whatever that was, we're going to have real strife. The fucking major. Did you guys see
Fucking major.
this HLTV coverage hub? Apparently they had it for the last two majors as well. I only saw it for this one. It's fucking great. I don't know
I
if
don't
people have
think-
seen this. It's
I
really,
think-
really nice.
I don't think they had it like this nice and fancy.
Yeah.
Maybe
Oh,
they did.
I think so.
But
as
I
well.
don't think. I think it was just like more of like the standard HLTV look, but like a major landing page.
I like the
This
look
is
of
like
this.
a
By the way,
full-blown-
for-
this one looks clean.
For the listeners, it's hltv.org/major, and you get this.
It's really
fresh
nice.
Yeah.
But like yesterday I spent a lot of time basically like most of my day just building out and going through different stuff around the major and the lead up to the major and like the event itself, because normally when I look at these things I'm more just focusing on like the Counter-Strike, but I wanted to look into the things around it, like where's the venue in the city, what are the what are some of the restrictions for spectators coming in? How are people going to be able to watch at home? Like, what are the different ways that they could? What other ways can people be interactive, like the fantasy or doing the pick'ems and all that kind of stuff? So it's just looking into more general things, but still things that I thought were interesting or core to the things that I'm interested in to do with the major. And looking through a lot of there's so much information out there, man. Like, there's so much shit to consume. People are putting stuff out there all the time. Blast are putting out some articles in the lead up to the major. Like, there's so many different ways that you can have that simulator that the guy built, like major.ieb or whatever the fuck it is. I'll get the URL later. But the one where you can go and you can like simulate how each stage is going to go. You can do fantasy on HLTV. You can do. They've even built their own pick'ems thing on HLTV. You know, there's so much going on. It's
Boggles your
curious.
mind.
Well, but it used to just be the Counter-Strike, right?
Yeah.
Like, remember how not bare bones, but we just have so many more frills now, and everything's still free, which is kind of nuts. I don't know what we want to talk about here exactly, because for me, the narrative going into this major, like where we are in the Counter-Strike competitive landscape as of April in 2023, is we have no clear world number one. We have a lot of teams who are equipped with the right pieces and are in striking distance to lift the major trophy. We even have some dark horse teams who, if the conditions are correct, could also be in that conversation. And some upset teams who showed some good Counter-Strike at the RMRs and now are hungrier than ever to back it up and stay at this level of CS as we made the transition into CS2 throughout the latter half of this year and going into next. So for me, it's like a really interesting time in the Counter-Strike landscape. I don't know. I've tried, because I don't know how you guys have been looking at it. For me, I'm looking at it a little bit more broad. This major means a lot for people on an individual level, but it also means a lot for like the game and the scene and where we're at and the unknowing of what comes next. There's no real question there. I'm just kind of spewing some of my thoughts here.
Just going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. I look at it, I'm kind of, I don't know. I don't think I've like really wrapped it up in a sense like that at the moment. I'm looking at it at the moment on a smaller scale of like a more individual level in terms of like who are like what are like the coolest stories around players coming into this major, right? And like I'm looking at it like at the moment just kind of focusing on for me, I think there's like three big names that I kind of touch on, that all have a chance of in theory winning the major and kind of completing the CS:GO story. And I don't know which one would be the coolest or most romantic story to have kind of close out on a high note.
To?
Well, there's Nico, one of the greatest riflers and players Counter-Strike has ever had across the entirety of CS:GO. He's still looking for his first major.
Not to win a major.
Yeah, the greatest player not to win a major.
Wouldn't you say that Zywoo?
I would say Zywoo is up there as well. I don't know if I'd make him the greatest player to not win a major. But I would say Zywoo is another one that has a story, the chosen one, the player who's been like one or two for the past 4 years, and like where, if he could win a major on the way out, like that would be cool. And my other one would be Cadian over on Heroic, and like the trials and tribulation that Cadian's had to go through throughout his career, and not on the same scale as Zywoo and Nico in terms of where he stands as an individual player within the legacy of the game, but just like what a cool wrap up it would be considering all the shit that he's had to deal with and battle through his career. So for me, like those three individual players have like a really cool angle coming into the major.
Okay, so you're a bit more attached to the personal story there. Janko, where are your headlines? Like, they could be anything, but what are your headlines looking at? Because I think that's probably a good way to try and summarize some thoughts here, because we can always get into the minutia of the type of Counter-Strike and everything like that, or the issues plaguing them. But you can normally summarize most of these teams' identity with a headline. So what do you got?
I mean, it's it's pretty similar, unfortunately, right? Like
Well, what about like FaZe? Do you think it's like this is a breaking point for this roster of FaZe if they, or is this a free crack for FaZe because the pressure's off? Like, what is the headline for FaZe?
I mean, it's a bit tough. I don't think, if they, let's say, don't make the playoffs even, I'm not really sure they would make changes to the roster. I mean, they still just
But
won
we're
the.
going into a new game, like there'll probably be some speculation. Like some of the older boys who are having like kids and stuff retiring. Like it's rain
Well, I
out.
mean,
What's going on? Like there'll be
that's
those conversations.
but I think that's like regardless of the major. Sure, like if they end up winning the major, then you're probably not going to see that. That really lowers the chance of that happening because you would feel a kind of silly. Or maybe that would be great. Maybe someone Carrigan, he feels like a guy like he would go out with a bang, right? Like he wins the major and then he retires, or moves into coaching or something along those lines, right? Like go off with a bang, go out with a bang. But yeah, I mean it's a little bit of a strange one for a lot of these teams. I think over the course of the last couple of RMRs, because you had G2 failing to qualify, now you have Cloud9, Astralis both times. I
VP.
think, yeah, VP, the defending champion, is not going to be there. I think a lot of these teams have realized through that how they need to play these games, even best of ones, even against underdogs, right? A lot of people were quoting Cadian's interview at the RMR where he's saying, there's people here who are, came here not to lose and not to screw up, and if that's your, approach, you're already one step behind, which I think really was eye-opening for a lot of these top dogs, maybe in a sense, or at least for some of the players. So I think there's going to be less upsets actually at this major because
Okay,
I think
that's an interesting
I
claim.
think the playing field is like more even, right? Like there's more good teams, and sure, there's still best of ones, but I want to think that these good teams and these experienced players will actually play as that and play as favorites, and that they have learned what it means to, you know, be a favorite, and how you can use that to your advantage and not just let the pressure overwhelm you, but just
I feel
accept that the pressure is there and rise to the occasion, so to speak.
I feel that if we take a look right now, right, like if we look at the opening matches, the way it's worked out with some of it has actually been beneficial, I would say. Like the fact you get G2 Mongols as an opening game, but I think Mongols are the higher seed in that situation.
Or Monty
right? Like,
Phase.
right, yeah. And I think, like, when I look at these matchups, I can make good narratives around them for where these teams are at coming into the challenger stage, right? FaZe, Monty, okay. Well, this here, I was also like looking at a bit of the veto stuff as well. I feel like this one's going to come down to like maybe Ancient or Mirage. Because like, anyway, regardless, the veto shit's unimportant. That bores a lot of people. But you get it's not tournament formats, it's vetoes.
What have you
Found
won
a
today?
fucking loophole.
Yeah, it's all right. I'll leave the vetoes alone.
It's
But I
all
think
right.
it's like it'll show like kind of where FaZe is at coming into the major against an underdog team who's playing a lot of Counter-Strike and performing pretty well, and it has a couple of really good like streaks on bogey maps right now. Like they have streaks on Ancient and Anubis right now, and they just play so much Counter-Strike. Like their map comparison is crazy.
I mean,
Boros
they're
played
playing
really well.
a game in 10 minutes. It's like 9:30 in the morning. They're playing CCT versus Havu.
Yeah, so and Boros played really well, which I know is like it's a double-edged sword. Like he might not back up that performance and he might get countered. That was something that Striker brought up last night to do with Boros. Or the other side is maybe he is just fucking nuts and he pops off again and has a strong, and it's a best of one, right? So it'll be a good game if FaZe can, just hold them back and put Monty away, or it'd be a nice like start of the major campaign for Monty if they can take a scalp like FaZe in a best of one opener. Like that game right there already, I'm excited about it. It's a defining opening match because it's going to set the tone for how we expect their challenger stage to go, right? That's normally what happens off the opening matches. Pain
I don't know.
Fluxo, domestic, yeah.
I don't know if it would set the tone, because I mean I always come into these. I always
You played
to
two
be
best
honest,
of ones in the first day, Jason, right? Like the first
I
game
have to say
has to set the
something
tone.
though. I have to talk about something.
yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, Jason. Go ahead.
Go on.
Well, it's just like I'm looking at this page, link the HLTV page, right? And I see that by the schedule, so if everything goes according to plan, not a single delay, technical delay or anything of the sorts, the last game is scheduled at 11 p.m. local time.
Yeah, but they have
That
allowed
is
for an hour and a
insane.
half between each game, though.
Yeah, which is unnecessary, probably.
But if they're running accelerated schedule, then it might be okay. But I see what you're saying. If they run to these set times and
So,
and you would expect delays, there will be issues.
and like, I'm sure that, for example, you see NIP Mouse is scheduled at 4 p.m. So I'm sure the winner slash loser of that game will play at 11. So you could plan a little bit ahead of time and give your team a later start, right? But it's also the major, so everyone's going to be, people are going to struggle to sleep the night before anyway. They're going to be up early at the practice room, grinding deathmatch for 17 hours, right? Because everyone wants to be in top shape. But I think it's just
You're only talking about the
unreasonable.
glamorous side, Janko. You're not talking about the, having the nervous shits or not being able to find anything like nice to eat and feeling a bit hungry, or the coffee tastes like dirt water. It's not what you're used to.
Or it's tea.
Or it's tea. That you only painted the glamorous side.
Well,
of it.
that's like if you're able to eat anything, which players might be, but coaches sometimes not so much. But yeah, like
Yeah.
why isn't anyone like talking about it? Blast used to hate me when I was a coach, and with a good reason, is because I was always like, bringing shit up and asking questions, like, and trying to protect my players and my team. Like that's my job as a coach. I don't give a fuck about your schedule or viewer or like your times for the best viewership. Like I do to some extent sympathize with it because I understand the industry and we're all trying like to make it sustainable, right? But you're
I
making me
think the
play
key
at
here is,
11
Janko,
p.m. in the evening when I already played the one day before. Like that impacts your ability to compete
what
at
what
a
I,
high
I,
level.
I
So I would be like, why is this? Why don't we start at 11 instead of 11:30? Because you can't start at, I mean, 10 a.m. is, I think, a bit too early for today's, like, the way the scene is operating. Like, to schedule the first game at 10, you have to wake up at
Careful.
7 or 7:30. What?
There's been some issues with people
at 10
complaining about
a.m.
10 a.m. matches.
Yeah, we know
Yeah,
all
yeah,
about that.
yeah. That's why I'm saying. So you kind of have to on the first day start at 11 really, and then put an hour and 15 minutes in the schedule. Like even the 15 minutes when you do it times 8, it's going to be 2 hours, right? So if a game is scheduled at 9 in that sort of a scenario instead of 11, that's fine, because even if it's some shit happens, technical delays, there's
There's going to
always
be
issues
lots
on
of
day one
factors,
with the
though,
client
right?
and Valve and like whatever the update that's the night before for the major. I don't know.
Yeah, there's always tech delays due
Right.
to that update,
So
aren't there?
so
Like
then
every
like
major.
with the delays it gets to 10:30, which is like still sucky, but now with the delays you might go past midnight, and you're playing like a 1-0 game, let's say, or even worse,
Or
a
0-1.
0-1 game against like a underdog team, perhaps, if you're the favorite or whatever, and you're maybe not in your top shape, and all of a sudden you're 0-2 and you have to win 3 best of 3s just to make it into the next stage. Like I'm just surprised that people,
But is that
no
Janko,
one is
right? Like
commenting,
we're
but no one said something. Like, at least that's what I say. If you're having issues like people had at the RMR, some were vocal about it, some weren't. I would put a message in like the chat to the admins or to whoever, saying like, even though I probably know they can't do anything about it, but I want there to be a record of me like bringing this shit up, because if you don't bring it up at the time, you don't really have a right to complain after the fact. Like, why didn't you bring it up? And then you bring it up and they say, well, we can't do anything about this because yada yada yada, and you're like, well, that's bullshit, but okay. And then you can say, hey, they just told me it can't be changed.
But is the problem just more that it's too many games in a day?
Yeah, it's way too many games in a day.
Like,
I mean, there's 16 games being played on day one.
yeah, and then you're either on the edge of elimination for day 2 or you're on the edge of qualification.
And
for
also
day 2, right?
the break between the last game of round 1 and the first game of round 2 doesn't need to be 2.5 hours. Put it like, well, actually, yeah, it's once the game's end, it's an hour and a half.
They have to redraw. Yeah.
But make it 30 minutes less. I mean, what, the redraw lasts 5 seconds? You already know the thing, right? Pretty much.
I guess it
And
depends
also
on
the
what their
teams-
setup is, and as well, like there's a lot of factors that play into the length of the day, right? Because if all of these games go like smoothly, there's no tech issues, everything just gets set up and it goes, and they're running accelerated schedule, then you can run that day easy peasy because it's not going to take an hour and a half per best of one time slot. That an hour and a half for best of one time slot is when the game is going the 30 rounds or going the OT, right? Or you have tech issues. And if you have both, right, if you have the tech issues and the long game, then that's where you get the delays in the day. But yeah, you are right, Janko. There are traditionally issues on day one more than any other day, right? That's the day that production has more issues and everything gets getting ironed out. So maybe just from that standpoint alone, it would make more sense just to have one set of the best of ones on the first day. But that's the problem. They don't want to expand.
But then you do a best of one and a best of three on the second day, right? Which you'd have to make it up somehow.
Well, you do that regardless, but I mean, like for the same teams.
He's saying adding.
Listen, to be honest, man,
more best of
with
ones.
the format and the best of ones.
Oh, we've done it. We've walked into format.
No. I'm just going to say like playing two best of ones on the same day. It adds a level of excitement, right? Like where a lot of teams, you're like, oh.
It is pretty exciting.
Greyhound is 2-0 after like day one. What? How
can they
like,
make it? Yeah.
Can they win now? We had that with Bait, who was 2-0 in the best of ones, couldn't qualify for the major. We had Ants 0-2 make it into the major. Like it provides some nice narratives and provides a level of excitement. So I'm okay with that. I don't mind it as much. And you have to play 2 games a day in other tournaments. Like you have to play 2 best of 3s if you're in this one group at ESL tournaments. So it's not like it's completely uncommon for teams.
The record needs to show that I didn't bring up the format conversation, Jason. I want it officially.
Okay, the adjudicator. I'll make a note in the books.
I need that to be noted that I did not bring up that format conversation.
Just wanted to bring that up because stuff like that used to really bother me, and the problem was like
it's fair.
I just hope I am expecting this to be not to have issues like at the America and Asia RMR, right? I'm not expecting that to happen. But if I was a coach and I come to play, right? And they tell me you're setting up here and you're playing against this team who just played a game and they didn't move from their PCs, I would not play until they have to move. Like, unplug all their shit. Like, they should play where you told me to play, and I should go set up at their station. I know they're trying to save time, but it's unfair that you play against a team who's already all set up, the players, and could be playing fucking aimbots all the time. Like, their players could be warming up. Like, they have an unfair advantage. I would say, no, you have to make them unplug all their shit and go through the setup again, because that's also fucking boring. Going in and setting up your NVIDIA settings and the monitor settings and doing all that. Like, there's a process before you're like all set up, plugging in your shit before you're ready to play. Why should my players have to go through it and their players not? In the meantime, they can still just warm up. I don't want to have to think about, and then I get into the game and I'm 5-0 down. Because
did we have this conversation privately, or did we have this on the podcast like 2 weeks ago?
I don't remember. Everything's a blur.
It's probably
right
a little
now.
bit of both. I think I've had this conversation with Janko a couple of times.
Yeah, me too.
But I won't go on for too long. I'm just saying, like, I'll end the rant here. But that's basically just stuff like that, man. For me, it's a big deal. And I think if you're a coach or a manager or whatever, like, obviously you want to put your team in the best possible spot to win, right? Without obviously cheating and doing some shady shit. And I don't think this falls under that. It's just trying to make it fair, right?
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's just I think we're just it's like a product of how this the schedule and how everything has to kind of play out. But I mean, this is a schedule that's obviously built for best case scenario. Like it's built saying nothing's going to go wrong, which is always a little bit nerve wracking. I mean, I don't know. Without adding a day, I don't really know. I don't think there's any kind of good solution,
days, right? Because you'd have to add days to each thing. So that's the problem, right? Like I don't know. I just think as long as the integrity, right, is like kept to the highest degree. Like from what you're saying, Janko, that falls under that for me, right? In the sense that we added in all of these like checks and balances. When you were a coach, Janko, they took your phones off you, right? They put them in what's this with players getting their phones back between maps? Am I seeing that? I swear I've been seeing some of that. Like between maps, players been getting their phones back.
There was some of that at the Americas RMR during the tech issues. Players were getting their phone back, but I don't think that's meant to be something consistent.
Which should also never happen, but yeah.
I think that was one of the products of the inexperienced admin crew in Mexico. I don't know
I
what
think
happened
if I'm leaving the playing area, if we're going outside to talk, I can ask. I remember asking for my phone once or twice to go through my notes, but then as soon as I get back to the PCs, I give it back.
It happened in Rio as well at the last major, didn't it? Because that was the whole tweet controversy with Dexter that popped chat off. Was he got his phone back during the tech delay?
Well, yeah, but he needs his phone back to get in Steam, but then using it to like tweet or whatever, right? Like that's obviously a different use case for it. But
no, they shouldn't be.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but there's like other things that we have in place at these events as well that just need to make sure that they're upheld as well, right? Like not having any internet access to the PCs and just all of those things that play into all of this. And that's on the level that the people at home don't really see, right? Unless you go and you read the rule book. Because I remember, like, I don't know if this is still done. I guess I can check it on GitHub if it's in the Valve rulebook. But like metal detectors, here we go. It is stage integrity, equipment. The TO will prevent players from bringing any electronics, pages, cell phones, etc., aside from permitted gaming peripherals, mouse, keyboard, etc., to the competition area by employing a metal detector security detail at the entrance. See, like that stuff right there. We put these things in place so that the sanctity and purity of the match is kept to its highest.
Dude, DSL
right?
is taking like my watch, which is analog. Like, so they're really like, you know.
Yeah. Well, this is the major one here. So I don't remember if when it's been done last. I don't know if I saw it.
It's been done for a while now. There's not like an actual metal detector you walk through, but the players get
the wands, right?
Yeah, when they're walking up on stage.
I guess you'd probably you would be doing it behind the stage, wouldn't you?
How about some headlines for who's gonna fail?
Who's gonna fail?
Who's gonna fuck up like the major?
I don't know.
Who's gonna be this year's phase?
I don't really have that angle on any of the teams here. Obviously, someone is. There's going to be upsets, but the thing is, but like, what do we?
A big fart from the North American squad.
The thing with it is, like, a lot of that we're just kind of basing it on, like, everything is just based off of recent form, right? There can be a little projection and speculation. There's going to be different head-to-head matchups that are going to determine like how certain games are going to go. But I don't know. Like I'm not looking at anybody here and going, yeah, these guys are just going to fail. Like I think everybody has different levels of success. So for like teams like G2 and FaZe, well, for them not making it to the playoffs, that would be probably considered a failure, right? But for somebody like Greyhound, winning a game or two and being on the edge of making it to Legends and maybe not and just missing is probably still, as sad as it sounds, a win, right? Like it's a small win, but it's considering how bad things have been going. It's better than where they're at. For NIP to make it to the Legend stage, that'll feel like par for the course for the team, right? But you're probably wanting them to go a bit further and be a little bit more competitive. Will they? The jury's still out on that, right? I think this could be like a defining tournament for Mouse if they have another bit of a stinker. If they struggle again, I think that maybe you could expect some stuff going over the Mouse camp. I don't know. I've kind of fallen out of favor with Mouse in recent times. They just don't seem to do it for me.
It's just they're not on the rise, right? Like they had like that grace period where we were kind of trying to figure out what their ceiling is. It's kind of like
I've
now
had
you
different
kind
periods
of know.
with them though. They were like in the beginning where it was like, okay, so they tried to play like a certain style. Then they seemed very like default heavy when they had some of these younger kids coming in the beginning. I was like, all right, fair enough. They're just gonna, get them through the basic levels of understanding of how they want to deploy these defaults and all the reactions off of it. Then they changed things up a bit. Then they changed a player. Right? There's obviously the whole exertion situation. And then they had some like decent runs, but nothing crazy, like nothing that we're really getting too excited about. I don't know. Is that harsh?
Yeah,
Am I being mean?
No, Mouse is a little bit of a weird one for me too. Yeah, but I mean, I have them. I think anything less than playoffs for them is a failure. To be honest with you, I think playoffs at the last major. I think with their expectations, I think it should be top 8 for sure. I don't know if I I'm not putting them as any kind of a lock, but I mean that's a team that I think that the goal has to be a deep run into the playoffs.
There's just so many teams here, though. The only teams that we're missing who are in the top 10 are Cloud9 and VP. And then the only other big name teams in my mind that we're missing are Big, Astralis, and Spirit. Outside of that, the major's not missing. That's a lot of names, I know, but we have basically all the top dogs here. It's one of these events that I'm going into and I'm looking at, and obviously it's all exciting. It's a major, everything. It's going to be great. It always is. But I don't know. The more I'm thinking about it, the weirder the vibe is. I said this last night on HLTV Confirmed. That do you guys think this is a harsh sentiment? And it's not meant to be. Like I understand that the play style that these teams are running, that it has a place and that it makes sense and that it is good sound Counter-Strike. But not having like slow VP and Cloud9 at the major, do you think that's going to change the viewing experience of obviously of matches that they'd be in? But I wonder how much of an impact that's going to have in the overall Counter-Strike we watch, if it's going to be a bit of a tone shift.
I don't think the Cloud9 not being there is that huge of a deal in that sense. I think VP is the really hard one, or the one that really kind of changes things. Yeah,
VP wasn't playing also the last major.
And but also like VP
not as much as after the change, and not as much as Cloud9, and that's why they won the major.
Yeah, I feel like VP is a team more than any other team that like forced teams to play into their play style, into that uncomfortable, slow, creepy pace that like teams were really uncomfortable with it. Like I don't think Cloud9 never gave me off that same vibe. VP more than anyone was like, we win because we force you to play our game.
The problem also for those teams wasn't their T side as much as their CT side. It was the saves.
Yeah. The saves is the killer, right? Like that's the that's the thing that adds a lot of time to games.
Something that I think some teams make a mistake of, like I saw that graphic with like maps played in 2023 by teams attending the major, and Monty, which is like the highest team with 163 maps, they have 4 times more maps played than Mouse, which is the lowest team with 34 maps this year, and that's a mistake from Mouse, to be honest. To not play more tournaments.
They should have played in more online shit?
Absolutely. A team like Mao's 100%, because their players are inexperienced to begin with. You know, like they just need more reps against anyone. I'm sure they didn't expect to go out so early in Rio, and they also in Katowice, they also didn't like do that great. In Pro League, they went out in the first round of playoffs, I think, the first playoff game they played, or maybe the second one. So I'm sure they expected to maybe have a bit more games at some of these tournaments. But when that doesn't happen, I think, you should play some of these tournaments, whether it's Brazy or any of these like online tournaments. On one side, like the prize pools are up in these tournaments, so you might win some nice little extra cash for yourself.
Nice for Cloud9 now. What's that, 300 grand or something in a couple of weeks with online tournaments?
Yeah, between the Bad Boom thing and Brazy, it's like 300K.
30,000 for winning or some shit like that?
And the first place for Katowice and Cologne is 400K. So, you basically made close to that in a couple of online tournaments.
Yeah.
But I think it also, you get official reps. And I'll tell you from, doing this Brazy tournament, sorry about that.
That's all right. That sounded like a very nice motor song.
Yeah, fucking idiot. But you get... like the Counter-Strike is obviously not the same as on LAN. Like it's more messy and whatnot, but it's still like probably get better practice than in actual scrims.
That's true.
So you learn more. I feel like, and also playing against some of these underdog teams, man, especially when it comes to the major, you need to know how to play against a team like Gamer Legion or Apex or Monty, right? Or One Win or he's coming back. They made a U-turn. All right.
That's all right. It's an early morning alarm.
Yeah, it's like you're doing this at 10 a.m., you piece of shit. But yeah, I feel like it would benefit some of these teams to do it. Sure. Also for young teams, especially. Like I see, G2 is not far off. Only 8 maps more than Mouse, but
they've won Katowice.
Yeah, and that and it's like but they're a different lineup with different things, and I'm sure it's not going to affect them as much. Them and Liquid are there. They also skipped Rio, both of them. Then you have phase and vitality there. Well, obviously they didn't really even have the time to play anything else when you look at their schedule and the travel and all of this stuff. So I think something to look for these teams is probably like getting more reps. I think it helps teams like Ants, for example, that they do it every now and then, even though they didn't do great in the Brazy tournament. Nerds has to play from
But that's
Israel
the
and
risk.
whatnot.
That's the risk. The ego can be hurt pretty easily, though. That's like one of the things, right? Like a couple bad losses. Maybe Counter-Strike players are a bit more mentally tough these days than they used to be, but there's some moody motherfuckers out there. Like I feel that it's not that there's people as persons, people as competitors. Like when you're in this like highly strung environment, not everybody operates in a good sense, and some of these things it can like taint or change the way that you're taking fights or like your confidence to push through a smoke or take a swing. Like I know we talk about confidence in Counter-Strike, it's one of these harder things to kind of quantify. But the way that I've been looking at it is it's like taking, and this is why the cliche of, oh yeah, you just got to play your own game. Yeah, when I feel like trying to extrapolate that in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so they're meaning like taking their timings, like they're setting the tempo. They're the one who are like calling for the flashes when they see a piece of utility, like they're reacting to it. They're not being like bullied and pushed around by it. That's kind of what I feel in that kind of a vibe. And if that gets shaken because you're nerds and you play with 80 ping online from Israel in a tournament and you get bodied and you go to LAN and you're feeling a little bit off, that's not great. Now I don't think that'll happen with nerds because that's not what happened when we saw him play the RMRs and stuff anyway. But it's more of a broader example. Do you think players are still like that today? That they can still get shaken that easily?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they can easily be a mess. And I mean, I think more than anything, I think that there's just the team environment, I think, is the biggest thing. Like, I think teams that come in shaky after a loss or not all that confident, like that's when you see those are the teams where you see like the individual collapses because the mood in the team, the environment in the team isn't set up in a way to like sustain individual people through those kind of tough stretches. And I think that's more when you see players kind of collapse, isn't necessarily that they're weak individually. It's that the vibe within the team is so poor that there's not anything to kind of hold them up emotionally through a tough stretch of a match or of a series.
Yeah, this is what makes it difficult, right? Because if you go in like with the way that you would traditionally approach a game, this guy like more often than not is going to find you this like opening kill in this strat or in this round, or your AWP's going to find that opening. He's going to win that opening exchange or whatever. When that doesn't happen is where like you need to start finding other options or like that. And
it goes
easy, a lot of different ways.
And it's easy when a game's going bad during those like tough moments and those collapses for you to like kind of slip into as a player. Like, I experienced it when I was coaching Liquid of just like, oh, here we go again. Like, the team is, we're not communicating and this is the same issues we've been dealing with for 2 months and it's rearing its head again. And like, you just kind of fall into, it's just what you said with like utility. You fall into like not reacting and not controlling situations and not actively trying to problem solve inside the server. You're just kind of going through the motions because you're like, yep, we've hit this little streak again where we're just going to play like shit, and that's just the way it is, the way it's been for the past month, for the last 2 events, and you stop actually playing the game is the phrase I always had for it, right? Like, if you're just going through the motions, you're not actively playing the game. You're just kind of there.
Yeah, it's like sometimes people are coasting a bit, right? Like you do the prac and the dry runs and the theory, and you call and you come up with these certain things, but you still need to be like energetic about the way you do it. Like you can't just go into things like you look at Counter-Strike right now. There's so many different like opening moves and variations of smoke walls and ways that you need to block areas. And if you're playing like in a retake position and like you have to surge into the site to try and get a kill to just stop them from taking, so your team has to save. Like there's the amount of choices that I think the players have to make these days is a whole lot more than it ever used to be. Like it's not as blunt caveman Counter-Strike as it was like a decade ago by any means.
And so many like individual opportunities for players to have like an impact. Like how do you want to like utilize this little one way? Are you going to try and challenge the gap of the smoke? Or are you going to try and challenge around the edge of it? Like what have you looked into in terms of your opponent? But you can very easily just kind of fall into, oh, you know what? Fuck it. My role in this tactic is to just turn the corner when the flash comes, and like you're not actively trying to do anything as an individual.
Yeah. I guess that creativity is a big thing that plays into the approach of the game as well. Do we want to? Yeah, I don't know. This is the problem I have with the major like conversation is the prediction stuff for it is really boring because pick'ems don't tell the story in the way that the story like should be told. It's broad stroke. You're looking at like a section of teams. You've got 16 teams, and essentially you need to have nine things picked: a 3-0, a 0-3, and 7 teams that you think are going to make it through. But like for me, when I look at it, I think there's more interest in the head-to-head and like the veto between the two teams and that whole story. Because and I don't know if this video is actually boring. You can tell me to shut the fuck up. But seriously, for the FaZe versus Monty game, for example, Monty like unless that changes today, right? They're on a streak on Mirage, and they're on a streak on Ancient and Anubis. Is that right?
Yes.
Like just reading that seems crazy, and I understand that their level of opponent isn't always the tier 1 big boys, but like they have confidence on those type of maps. They have like some pieces that we know, right? Like LMBT is the coach of this team. We know like he's done sound work in the past. You look at some of the pieces in the team, like SDY. He wasn't performing poorly on Navi, I wouldn't say. You know, like he was just kind of doing his job. Now he's on this Monty team, and I guess they're ride or die by Waro 2K and Boros, really. But
It's Boros' birthday today.
oh,
Happy birthday,
Happy
Boros.
birthday, dude.
Boros. Yeah, that's
Live
quite
long
nice.
and prosper.
But this is where like looking at this matchup is interesting to me, like seeing how this kind of a game would go. Boros is like a guy who wants to aim map, and FaZe are the type of team that would like happily oblige for that, right? Boros is very aggressive. You've got an AWPing in-game leader, you know, going up against Carrigan. Obviously, that's going to be a very difficult game for him to call. How good's the game plan going to be? I think, as I said earlier, the map may be Ancient or Mirage, which are still maps that Monty have streaks on, but FaZe have to ban Vertigo. They probably don't want to go to Anubis. Seems a bit like risque. Monty probably remove Overpass and Nuke and Inferno. So I think if you look at an Ancient Mirage opening matchup, Monty are in the conversation to be able to snatch that one away. Like for me, I would look at that game and I would say, well, it's still. You say yeah or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
Tell me why.
I think like, well, because I feel like FaZe will be pretty good at this major, but I also think, you know, a team like Monty, obviously playing a lot of games has its drawbacks too. Like with so many officials all the time, you don't really have
You're showing a lot of the playbook, and you don't have
a
time
lot
to
of money
necessarily add new things.
to practice, right, and just change things. And also you're playing a lot of games against lower tier opponents who don't play in the same way. Like just the players are not as patient. There's a lot more aggression, over peaking, which you are punishing perhaps. And then you play against Robs, who's not going to peak you until like the last 2 seconds, and he's obviously going to be more patient than you. And you know, you have to play against a different style of opponent. And sure, the pro of it is you play so many games and against so many different opponents and styles that probably those officials you played against, fast, slow teams, passive, aggressive, strat heavy, default heavy, right? And you had to have, if you want to win, a way to play against all these styles. So probably going to be pretty good at sort of adapting on the fly and switching things up and calling. But there's a reason why tier 1 teams are tier 1, and players, you know, they come up with stuff and have things. They have these small little plays and moves that some of these lower tier teams just haven't seen. They don't use, right? Especially when you play against them when you're on the T side and the tier 1 team is on the CT side. Like individually, the players with their, you know, defensive smokes and some little trick plays that they have.
I think, Janko, the question would be, right, because what you're building and saying here is that FaZe are going to have more, right? That's in the higher level of Counter-Strike, FaZe are going to have more. But I think this is the question that the general pundit would want to ask you in this scenario is, what have FaZe shown you lately that keeps them as the favorite over Monty for you?
One Pro League.
Okay,
And-
so
and
the
I mean-
recent trophy.
I mean, obviously, you know, there's not much there in terms of results, but what are they playing compared to Monty? I mean, you put Monty in these tournaments, their last place 4 times out of 5, you know, realistically speaking, in best of 3s. So
Yeah, but
Yeah.
this is a best of one. That's the problem,
Yeah,
right?
FaZe had to go through the last chance qualifier, but they fucking got it done. They still came back against Cloud9, knocked them out, who are a really, really good team. Lifted the trophy in Pro League, and sure, Rio was a stumble, but they lost to Vitality in the end, who won the whole tournament. And this was after everything at the RMR, and we've heard from Twists,
I
like
think
how exhausted he is and whatnot. And they're also fucking FaZe, dude. you know.
I think too, like this. I saw a tweet this morning. I'm trying to find. I can't remember who put it out.
You tell me, why do you think SDY and fucking Demq and Krasnal are going to beat Rain, Robs, and Brocky? It's up to you to make that argument, not for me to tell you why FaZe will beat Monty.
Well, I don't think Monty will win, but I think that Monty have a pretty good chance to win, right? Like I think that it's not
Who has a higher
clear-cut.
chance to win?
He's hyping up the game,
FaZe.
Yanko. He's trying to make you. He's
but
trying
we're
to make
not on
it
a
feel like
fucking
this is a close
broadcast, are
affair.
we? You know.
No, I think that it matters how like close it's going to be, and the fact that I think Monty have a chance to win. That's what I'm saying. Like if they play a map like Mirage, you're playing against a team who's just got like just reps on this map. Who's just playing all the time. This is one of the factors of this. I understand that they don't have the same experience level and whatnot, but the stakes of this, I assume it's just going to be like the normal booths for groups, right? Like I literally have no idea what anything at the major is going to look like, but normally in these type of stages, it's not like there's not a stage or anything. It's just
Yeah, of course. The pressure is on FaZe in that matchup.
yes, and then when I look at it being Ancient or Mirage, which are maps that Monty, I know as you're saying, like they're playing against lower caliber opponents, but it's maps that they're going with a lot of confidence in, and the play style of the way that these two teams could match up in terms of having some strong individual riflers. It could be one of those explosive, more mid-roundy, clutch-heavy types of games. Which, if it gets there, that's where I'm going to start to favor FaZe, right? They should be better in the clutch. They should be better to close out the 3v3s or the 3v2s. Like those are the situations that they want to put themselves in. But I think that like with the work and the hunger of a team like Monty and some of the potential of the players, that it's like a 60-40 game.
It's a 75-25 game, dude.
Well, we're allowed to disagree, but
of course,
No
think-
disagreements.
Of course we are.
I think that like it's definitely not, the future's not clear for FaZe. They don't come in with like a clean slate going, this is just like strong FaZe, because it's not. This is a FaZe that winning Pro League and then having a hard time at the RMRs, right? Like they almost didn't make it to the major. They almost did a G2 or what is now known as a Cloud9. That's a possibility that we almost live in, right? So there's not a lot of strength in the FaZe name as of right now, right? But
There's not the same fear as there was like going into Rio last year.
no,
for
like I
instance.
don't look at any of these teams like giants that can't be toppled. It's the same with Vitality. It's the same with G2. Like I think if you put those two names up against Monty, I'm giving you the same type of a conversation. But then I think if you put like a Monty up against, I don't know, like a Na'Vi or a Cloud9, they probably have a harder time. I think they just like would have a more difficult time in a matchup like that.
I mean,
Yeah,
you could say that for every team. Of course, anyone can beat anyone.
To be fair, I'm looking at this here. Monty beat Cloud9 at the fucking RMRs. So just take it all back. They beat him on Mirage.
They made
16-9.
best of 1-9.
On Mirage, 16-9. Yeah, 16-9.
Yeah.
So that ain't bad.
Cloud9.
Now you're coming around,
Whenever you
Janko.
have expectations, they disappoint you. Whenever you don't have expectations, they surprise you. Like that's just Cloud9.
I love the
Literally,
arc
that's
that
Cloud9.
I love the arc that Yanko is coming around on Cloud9 finally. Over
What
the
do you
past
mean?
month. He had his whole girlfriend situation where he was like, I think they're actually in a pretty good place right now. They're going to be coming around. I think they're figuring it out how to kind of deliver these big moments. And then they've just shit the bed at the RMR.
Yeah, but that's the thing, That's the thing.
No, it's like she's still a psycho. Like you can't kill crazy.
Yep. You're like, yep. Oh, I'm reminded why I didn't want to be with her in the first place. Fucking hell.
Exactly. And now they won Brazy Party. So
And
Yeah.
then they win Brazy Party. They
So
won
trust me, I've
$300,000
changed,
in like the last
It's
month.
a different hair color. It's not pink anymore.
It's blue.
Yeah,
No,
but I mean, I get what you're saying, Chad. It's just like I don't know. There's a reason why these teams are better than them, and the reason why upsets happen a lot of the times is because favorite teams don't play up to their level. They start playing like shit. They do inexplicable things in games, and one of the biggest problem is, FaZe plays against, and FaZe would play against Monty as if they're playing Navi. Monty is not fucking Navi, and you need to be aware of that coming into the matchup. How these players will act in the clutches. That they will probably over peak you in a clutch, in a post plant, right? The guy will search for the kills, or they won't be as patient, or whatever it is that you think about this team. Or
Unexpected
if it's a
peaks.
different lineup, they might be overly patient and too slow, and you just need to sort of bully them a little bit in those after plants and go for a faster retake. I mean, that's what Cloud9 was doing to Vitality on Inferno in Rio on the CT side, which is not Cloud9 style, and Vitality was pretty surprised by it, and that's what pretty much won Cloud9 Inferno. Just that little change in their approach. So that's why I'm saying I'm hoping that these teams have seen that by now and felt it on their own skin and will come into the games and say, hey, we don't want a repeat of this game or that game. And they're going to be prepared better for some of these matchups. And if that's the case, if FaZe plays their B game, right? Maybe even C plus game, but let's say B minus game against Monty, it's like 16-9, 16-10. Unless Monty is playing like the best CS of their life, then it's an overtime win for FaZe. That's how it's supposed to be.
In theory.
Yes. Of course,
Yeah, well, I mean,
16-2 in the end.
I'm interested. It's so interesting that you're taking such a hard line. Like, I think that's so curious. Like, you're basing it off of pedigree and them showing up, which recent history doesn't tell us. Like, I find that, like, this is why it's easy for me to sit here and go, yeah, like 60-40, because what about, like, I know how good FaZe can be, but what have they done? Like, Pro League was a month ago now. Like, that's a long time ago in Counter-Strike. Like, G2 winning Katowice, that factors into, like, the longer conversation as with these contender names, right? Like, the teams who have picked up trophies in the last 6+ months. Those are the teams who, like, we're talking as contenders going into this, because we have so many different splits of teams. But it's like, I don't know. I feel that these teams like Nine, like Monty, they came through and they qualified and they beat some, like, decent names. So, and in this environment, I think that they're favored. So it's when I say favored, I mean they have favorable conditions for them to be able to succeed. I don't think they're favored to win the matchups. They're still the underdogs, but they have favorable conditions to be able to pull off that upset. But you just have, like, a hard line that you think FaZe will just take them to school.
Yeah.
Like, where does, I don't know. I guess you can't really. It's kind of like a blind faith, because the confidence for it.
It's not blind faith, but you're looking at the last 3 months. I'm looking at the last 5 years. For example, right? Like,
but I don't understand.
Boros, yeah, he's playing great. He's not fucking Twists.
But we already know, like,
He
upsets at majors happen, right? Like, this is why it's such like, I'm having a hard time with the hard line.
I know, but why do the upsets happen?
Well, because teams lose.
Why do they lose? Why do favorites lose?
There's a lot of factors.
If you look at the underlying reasons for it, I don't think those things will factor in as much this time around as they did the previous couple of majors.
What
this
is
could
there?
age so poorly for you, though, Janko.
Yeah, I don't care. It's my opinion, dude. Like, I'm not here to give, like, a hot take or anything.
I know,
like,
but it's not
some
bedded
upsets,
in any, like, science.
Some
it's
upsets
bedded in,
will
like,
happen.
religion. There's, like, no science to, like, what you're saying. It's all like faith.
Yeah, but that's the same thing that you're saying. It's all based on faith. What you're going to tell me that
in recent history, Monty's got more reps.
Monty's result
history, right?
against Evil Geniuses, Nexus, Astralis Talent, iNation, Big Academy, LDLC. Now you have, like, Force, Cloud9 ends from the RMR, Spirit Academy, Big Academy, Ecstatic, Chapito, Honoris. There's a win against 9 there in a best of 5. 1 win, Saw, Paloma, Apex, Spirit Academy, Sangal, Apex, Heat. These are the heavy hitters that's giving you confidence.
Ensign Cloud9.
All right. Cloud9.
We all think Cloud9 should be at the major, right?
Yeah, man, but Cloud9 is also known to choke. Like, that's not a massive surprise to me. Sure, of course, I would have favored Cloud9 in the matchup, but whenever you expect something of them, that's it. Like, that's where they end up disappointing you.
Yeah.
On their, Chad, on their Mirage against Heroic in the 2-0 game, they won 3 rounds on T side.
Yeah, but that's
Monty
in a
did.
best of 3. We're talking best of 1s.
Yeah, but it's their best map. Like you said, it's going to come down to Mirage or Ancient, right? So
Yeah, well, there's probably a third option, but one of those two by the looks of things, depending. Definitely no Vertigo.
SDY had 3 kills on T side.
Oh, that's very much less than ideal.
So, like, I'm just telling you, right? Like, that's why I feel like, yeah, they're playing great in the tier 2, tier 3 scene. A lot of reps. There's some good players in there. They're not a bad team, obviously, since they're the highest seed in the challenger stage, right? But I can't put them. They were 19-9 in first kills in that game that they lost, 16-12 to Heroic. Like, there's a massive gap between Monty and FaZe. It's not a 60-40 game. The best of 1 or no best of 1. Even against 9, if FaZe was playing, which I value higher than Monty, yeah, don't give them Vertigo. And then that's, you ban Vertigo, Nuke, and Anubis if you're FaZe, and you won the game. That's it.
That's it.
Most likely.
Well, there are some other matches in this challenger stage. If you guys would if we've got to the final statements.
Ted is just
this.
like fucking shell shocked.
Yeah, we spent like half an hour on Monty FaZe. I think we've gotten to the end of the road. I don't think you guys are going to agree.
I mean,
on
you
this
can
one.
translate that to a lot of other games, right?
Exactly. That's why there's probably no point us talking about any of the
Like
other
Liquid
games, Jason,
Apex.
'cause it's not even being human. It's just this team is more experienced and they're just going to win. There's not like even a conversation. That's literally it. It's like, what the fuck?
I'm not saying that they can't. Of course, Monty can win. They can absolutely beat
Why
FaZe.
are they even here? Let's just like get them out of the event. Like, there's no point even having them here. Like, what
What
are we talking about?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that FaZe is a bigger favorite in the matchup than
FaZe are the lowest seeded team that had to
think.
qualify through a last chance qualifier.
Or-
That's the only
So
thing in
what,
recent
dude?
history
It's
we
a
have to talk
qualifier.
about, other than FaZe bombing out of Rio and saying we're
Who do you
tired.
think has higher chances to win the thing, FaZe or Monty?
FaZe, but when we're breaking it down into best of 1 games, the opening game of you're basically painting this in like a vacuum. In a vacuum,
No, you're also
FaZe
talking,
should win,
but
of
Chad,
course.
you're talking about
but we're not in a vacuum.
Okay, so it's an opening game where FaZe has been boot camping for a week. They know what you know about the veto, right? They can heavily prepare for this game. You think Monty's going to prepare better for the game than FaZe?
Well, I'd hope not.
Have a better plan?
I still have FaZe
Do you think they have better
to win,
players?
Janko. But the point is, there's still a chance they can lose.
Yeah, there is a chance. I think it's smaller than you think it is. That's the only difference. That's fine. That's fine for me, Chad. It's fine that we're disagreeing on this. I don't need to convert you, and you don't need to convert me. Like, it's just, I don't see a problem here, man. Like,
no, but it makes like the conversation. If you just when we initially brought this up, and it was just no. It's like if you're hard line on something like that, like there's literally the conversation can't go anywhere. You got to present some things here. But if all we're going to present for every name with more experienced players is they have more experienced players, they should win.
They have more
Then,
experienced players, better players, more time to prepare. They're better at preparation. And is that enough? Meanwhile, you on the other side they're the underdog and they've won a lot of games against shit teams lately. And the veto, apparently. Like, because you think, they play Mirage better than FaZe does?
Which map do you think would probably be the best to beat FaZe on at the moment?
For Monty, Vertigo. I don't know. I haven't dug deep into the veto, man. Like, I'm not
exactly.
I didn't
That's why like this conversation is pointless.
But I don't. But the veto doesn't matter
because
here
we're
in
not
the best
talking
of
about the
ones.
matchup. You're
Like,
talking about fucking generalizations. That's
No,
why there's
but
no point talking about it because what are we looking at? Like, I'm trying to look at the ways that they can win, right? The conditions of where it could be possible.
Sure, it is possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think it's highly unlikely. Burp, burp. I'm trying to imitate crickets here. But
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to find a way.
Jason, what's
way to
your?
go.
You have any thoughts on anything about all in life?
I know.
How
I've
was
been
those
letting you
fish and
guys
chips
duke this one
yesterday?
out. I think, honest to God, honest to God, I think the trap here for FaZe in this matchup. If you want to talk about, I mean, I haven't broken down Monty's style on maps or done the veto either, but like I think the real trap is kind of what you guys have, or Chad has already mentioned, where Monty's gonna love getting into aim battles, right? So if you're FaZe, it's like don't give them these kinds of heads up fights. Like if you play like standard teamwork early in the round, if you don't sit there and have like the overconfidence to just be like, I'm Twist, I'm Rops, I'm gonna take this heads up duel. I think if you're
But why
FaZe and you
not,
just like
man? Like this is the way you look at it. Like this is like it can be one of two ways, right? If you feel like that Monty is so one-dimensional that that's the only way they can win games is out-aiming you, then maybe you consider that like about changing stuff so you don't allow them that. But you can't change who you are, right?
no,
And
right.
and who is FaZe? They have a bunch of fucking skilled aimers and great players. So is that's the thing? Is like Boros a better aimer than Twist is?
I think you throw
How
if
many
you
players
can,
are better aimers than Twist? Let's fucking go
I
and have
mean,
an aim battle against Twist and Rain, dude, and see how that goes for you, right? Like, why would FaZe have to think like that? We're just like, okay, we see what they play, how they do, what do they like to do, what are their favorite things to do. We try to deny them that, but without changing who we are, right?
yeah, it's not like a change who we are,
That's
but
why
I think
that's why
if
favorites
FaZe,
lose. That's why they lose. If someone like FaZe goes in and tries to play, I don't know, all of a sudden super passive on the CT side and gives them a lot of room and doesn't want to give them those early fights, and suddenly you find yourselves in situations that you haven't even done in practice, you've never been in, and then you don't know how to play those situations, right? And you only realize that after the game, after the fact, and that's why they come out and say we didn't play our own game because you
but
overthink stuff.
but I think this is also a strength of FaZe that would lend more to like having a higher favor for them is just the sheer experience of playing big matches and having to go through different styles and having to play more team oriented Counter-Strike at times and having to play more individual. Like they have a sense as a team of when it's like, okay, we don't have, maybe it's not my A game as an individual, so lean more on the teamwork, and they have more protocols in place to actually make that successful. I think FaZe's playbook, if they encounter issues, is so much wider, and there are so many options that they can fall into that Monty won't have if like plan A doesn't work. I mean, I'm closer to the Janko side of things. I don't think I think FaZe is going to come in and handle business, but I certainly see the potential for Monty to upset it. I mean, I also kind of fall into the camp where I think a lot of these teams that we see in challenger stages and even legend stages is like these big name favorite teams often just start slow. And I think that would be probably a big talking point for me and I think on the broadcast, if Monty does come out and cause an upset or does come out and have this good first map that's going down to the wire, I think it's very easy to see a world in which, FaZe, G2, Liquid, those would be like the three big names in this challenger stage in terms of them starting slow and having some really rough first games that are probably uncharacteristic of what we'd see later on in the event.
But that has a reason, right? Like the
Yeah.
reason is the intensity there. You saw that with FaZe at the RMR. Like
Yep.
the pressure was a factor for them in the initial run, and then you could see the intensity increase as things got more and more dire. And then that was the same as when they were winning in Pro League. You could see the intensity like for every round and that's one of the factors that is the tiring part, is being able to keep that intensity. So you're basically hoping that FaZe are well rested enough from getting back from Rio and then having a bit of a break, then going into a boot camp to be able to bring that intensity. And then on top of that, what you're talking about is being able to bring that intensity from game one, where it's the opening matchup. And the stakes are, I suppose, the lowest at that point in that opening game. So,
Yeah, but yeah, I almost think to a certain extent, if you're FaZe, if you're one of those favorite teams, I know it's kind of like almost backwards. It's almost like I think you have to look at that as in the early games having the higher stakes, right? Like we're probably way more comfortable that, like if this was a best of three, like we wouldn't necessarily be having this huge, massive conversation that Monty would be able to have an upset in a series play. So in some sense, it's like this weird feeling where, yeah, it's the first game and you still have 3 chances to make it through and 3 lives to spend. But the best of ones are probably the higher stakes for teams like FaZe and G2 before they get to the series play.
What's where the games are going to be closer, right?
Yeah, and it's where there's the
opponents
most
are more
propensity
comparable.
for an upset.
Yeah, well,
Like,
if the conversation was in a best of three, you're right. It wouldn't be the same at all because it would be over a broader subset of rounds. Like this
yep.
is the thing. Like the players still talk about it today, even though we talk about the pistol rounds having like less impact. But you still hear them. Yeah, we lost both pistols and a couple of clutches, and that was the game, right? Like that's still the difference in best of ones, or it still can be the difference in best of ones. So that's why if a close game can get out of control for anybody, and by the time you realize it's too late, well, it's fucking already too late. But there's a
Also,
couple of teams that are like threats. I think that Monty is one of them in this group. I don't think a team like
sure.
Fluxo or Mongols or Greyhound or even Complexity for that matter are like threats. Like Forza are a threat. Gamer Legion and Apex have the potential to be threats, like to take down some of the better teams. Like we see these things happen all the time now. It's pretty frequent. And again, like what you just brought up in this best of one, that upset potential gets amplified. Like Apex versus Liquid, opening game. Like this is a game where you could use the same conversation about the pedigree of the players over there at Liquid and their experience and everything, but in recent form, it's not very good. They're not functioning to the capacity I think people think that they're capable of. And Apex are one of these teams with some decent players. I don't think there's anybody on it. The newer guys on Apex are the ones who, when I watch the games, I'm maybe giving more attention, like JL, for example. The older guys, I guess we know more what we're getting from them, but they're a threat to win a map. And I feel like that's a victory for some of these teams as well, which also changes the dynamic. Like any win is a fucking victory for some teams here.
Yeah, that Apex Liquid one is kind of unique though, obviously because like Apex doesn't have the same kind of like I think like grind that Monty's bet on with the level of wins that they've had. They're also in like that really tier 2 where they're beating up on. They have a nice win over OG and Brazy Party for what that's worth. But like
There's
I would
definitely
look
not
at
as
that.
much shine on Apex as there is on Monty.
Yeah, and I would
I
look at
wouldn't
that
say.
matchup and I would say Liquid should be able to just handle this with no real issues, unless but like the X factor with Liquid is always like which Liquid are you going to get at the start. Like which Liquid is actually going to show up to play. Like I have less confident in Liquid's like mental fortitude to be prepared right out the gate than I do for FaZe. Like I expect FaZe to come in a good place, understanding, and Kerrigan and Robin having that team like mentally prepared to go on this like little bit of a journey. Where Liquid, I'm always kind of like iffy. I don't feel like they found that center as a team that they can lean on to be able to come into game and have that intensity, and that's really the X factor in that matchup. That's the only way I see Apex winning it.
When Liquid was always like at their best over the years, their like mental talisman, I guess, was always on form. Probably just from a mood standpoint, if anything, right? Like when you had Stewie there, it was important for him to be like in a good mood for how that was going to reflect on the rest of the team. Because Stewie's like one of those type of guys who can lift the energy in a room, right? Like, he's got a good energy about him. He can pump others up.
Yep.
Yeah. And I feel like Yakinda is that for Liquid now, which is why like when the conversation about Liquid living or dying by Yakinda, I think it's some regard in the server, but I think more of the regard is like how the comms are and the kind of mood that he's setting. Unfortunately for him, because he is that personality, I feel like that burden in a team like Liquid, where you have some quieter, more softly spoken individuals, or maybe some people who are a bit more inclined to the tilt, you need that guy to do a lot more, which doesn't really seem fair.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was the burden that Stewie had, that he like eventually, that was like the thing that ground him down the most, was like that emotional responsibility within the team was just so exhausting after a certain period of time, especially when things weren't going well for longer periods.
Well, that's what makes Heroic such a strong culture, right? Is they have everybody buy into that. I don't know if there's any other team that have... Janko, who do you reckon?
And Cadian's a freak of nature as well with that kind of stuff.
You two are more sporty people than me. When you look from the outside at teams, which team after Heroic do you think has that closest like team bond culture? Or I don't even know how you define it. But like after it gets a little bit harder, the cultures don't seem like there's too many like that.
I think G2 has a pretty good culture now. After the fail at the last major, like at the RMR, and after that, I think they've really figured it out. I think it's one of the
They
main
changed
reasons.
a lot of the backbone to it, didn't they, as well? Like Nyack went, and like that's I've got to say his name
Petsa,
wrong
yeah.
again. Yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah, and the coaching change and Edward coming in as well, like all those things helped them. I think that's why they won a couple of tournaments and were playing much better Counter-Strike, right? Because their mental was much better. We talked about this like 6 months ago on the podcast, or like when we talked about G2, or even longer, when we talked about the pressure for them and Vitality and the roster changes, and how the pressure and like always being so stressed while playing was what's holding them back. And I think another reason why Vitality is finding more success is also their mental, right? Like finally they become strong mentally instead of weak. They're the ones making the comebacks instead of allowing comebacks, right? The talent and the CS is there. They have good players, both teams. They have obviously Zonic on the one side as well as the coach, right? Like they know how to play CS and all that stuff. It's just being able to do that in high pressure situations was what was holding both of these rosters back.
Yeah, but I think like that has to tie into the culture as well, right? Like it's kind of, because this is the thing. Like, some people probably think it's a bit corny, but I really think it's very not admirable. That's not the word I'm looking for. I don't know, whatever has been built by Cadian over there. I think that's great. Like I think that what he's done is
it's incredible.
Build this like culture of honesty with each other, but also like a real shared passion and love. Like you can see that they're all on that same. They're all fucking frothing it. Like, and that's
probably his greatest accomplishment as a leader as well. Like when you consider the in-game leader for the team, the fact that he's been able to build that is probably more impactful, I think, than anything tactically he's even brought to the team.
Yeah, I think as well. It's obviously helped because they're still like all Danes, which probably helps the culture a little bit there from that regard. I feel like...
And they're still winning.
I feel like G2 and FaZe have good like team bonds or cultures. Like remember during Kato when they had the whole COVID situation, JKS was in and out, but they were just like staying up late, playing a lot of like retake servers together and stuff. So with things like that helping, like I think those things are positive for team cultures, but I think that like FaZe and G2 just have like these mood swings that they're capable of. Like some of the individuals maybe get a little bit moody, and I don't think anyone has. But I guess that's probably the same for Heroic as well. It probably happens in all the teams.
Well, the nice thing for the Heroic is, they're still like they haven't hit any like major struggle section to really see how that can, like they haven't had those. We talk about them all the time having like a really high floor, right? They don't get upset. We haven't seen them have any of like the disaster RMR failures like G2 and Cloud9. We haven't seen them have like an ultra disappointing moment like FaZe getting to that burnout exhaustion level. It'll be interesting to see if they actually ever do get to that point, how they're able to kind of respond to it, right? Because, I mean, it's easy to keep the attitude up when things are going good, event after event, and you're going deep into playoffs. Like, it's easy to kind of ride that wave. But if you're going event to event to event, you have a busy schedule, and things are starting to go south and go wrong, how do the players respond to that kind of same attitude? Is it strong enough foundation built up to carry them through a rough stretch?
Yeah, I think this is one of I honestly just think the major's going to be a clash between these bigger names, like the five big boys, and then a couple of those like underdogs. It's just, I think I agree with Janko's sentiment about overall there probably being less upsets. I think that most teams have had better kind of like run-ins or hopefully preparation for the major, and we get the better results in these best of ones, and they can kind of set the record straight, because those conversations being had like going from event to event into RMRs, and this is like you've had time off. Everyone should have had some time off, other than these madmen playing in fucking online tournaments, and you should have the focus quite clear, right? I think that is where the broad assumption starts, but it's never that easy. And that tends to be an issue.
And I want to give, we talk about Heroic as a team that rarely gets upset. Another team that rarely gets upset, actually?
Navi?
It's Furia.
Oh, hold up a second. And get Art on
what
the phone.
The
and
fuck?
the reason for that is art. A lot of it is art and what they do. And that's because he doesn't give a fuck. And Furia doesn't give a fuck. They play their style, whether it's Navi, FaZe, or whether it's Monty and the Mongols, right? And the reason for that isn't that their style is so
No one
amazing that when they
expected
play it,
this arc.
that they want that when they play it, it's like so insanely good that they will beat everyone. No, the reason for it is the players played the same, right? Like they play the situations properly. They don't get nervous. They don't choke. And sure, Furia did get upset a couple of times, especially this year. If you look at it,
Katowice at
with
IFC.
Katowice at the IHC and then online to EG Black, right? But if you look at the majors, especially, and some of these bigger tournaments, I mean, they usually do a pretty decent job of not losing to some random teams. And at the majors, I mean, they were top 4 last time in Antwerp. Did they just miss out on the playoffs, or they were in the playoffs of Antwerp? Stockholm, maybe not. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I think that's like one of the reasons for it. So despite all the flaws that they have when it comes to winning a tournament, like some of those things that are flaws for one are a good thing for some of that other stuff. But I mean, you guys also mentioned just these teams that are playing the smaller tournaments too. I just wanted to talk a little bit about Astralis. And
Sure.
because they made it all the way into the final, and it was up and down. They would play like a game, it looks really good, then the next game it wouldn't look so good. And I just want to hear your thoughts. For me, the problem with Astralis is like this: like they didn't build the roster properly, and the reason is like, are Baz and Altex good? Still kind of early to tell. Like they had some good games, some bad games. Altex, it was just his first tournament. But that's the problem. Like you need more time to develop some of these players. And then on the other side of things, you have Glaive, Blamer, Device, where you could argue Glaive maybe a little bit past his prime, Device probably towards the end of his prime and his peak, and Blame, maybe at the middle of it, right? And they're way further on that sort of bar, and Baz and Altex are at the very beginning. And if it's a 3-2 split, I think that's like a too big of a gap and a divide where, it's
They're
hurting.
too far away
could,
from winning.
Yes, you could
Okay.
actually be a contender if two players that you had instead of them, they don't have to be fucking amazing. You don't even have to get Stair, who is pretty fucking good. But let's say Copenhagen Flames dissolved or went bankrupt. RIP, did a lot of good things for the Danish scene. But someone like Borup, for example, you don't think he could do a better job than in those roles than like
Yeah, I see what you're
Altex or
saying,
Baz,
and he
right?
wouldn't
And
be
he's free,
hugely
let's say.
expensive or anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
So that's like my
So
thing.
the mentality is: do you want to use the players that you have who are good right now, at the 3 of which, if you had 2 more strong components, could
Right.
put you back in the conversation to run deeper in tournaments, right? Like that's essentially it. You're saying with
Yeah.
some known upgrades over these 2, who we understand what they're trying to do with the academy, but Denmark is rife with players. You plugged in 2 more than serviceable people, gave them the chance, sat them in the right direction, and had
Well-
them support Device and Blame F. You could be in the conversation.
This is where you go back to like all the mismanagement conversation we had about Astralis over the past 2 years, because like what Janko's getting at is like it feels like they're half this team is geared to win now and half this team is geared to be like the build up rebuilding phase with Altex and
Yes.
Buzz getting them acclimated, and that in reality should have been happening for the past like year and a half, 2 years out of COVID, out of the online era. Like that was the window to have this rebuilding phase to where you have Glaive, Device, and Blame F, and 2 guys who are properly acclimated and now should be on the upswing. But because of the mismanagement, because probably realistically kept Zipix around too long in that position, they could have had someone in
And
his
there
role
was other
doing
changes
that
as
build-up
well.
phase. Yeah, and there were other changes as
Yeah,
well.
they-
But
they tried to-
they really screwed the window on when they should have been rebuilding.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's because they tried to salvage what was left of the team when the certain parts were leaving, right? And they didn't really supplement that very well. The biggest issue was not having like the queen on the chessboard of the AWPA. That was something that eluded them like throughout, right?
mean,
so
dude-
now that they finally have that back, but it's only temporary, right? Like Device probably has a couple of good years left.
Yeah, and you're wasting them.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I agree.
And-
I see what you're saying.
And even
I
like
agree.
it even happened like you didn't do it after you failed to qualify for Rio, and now it cost you the only major this year, and then you're repeating the same mistake. And also, fuck Astralis, dude, who are like on their high horse about they fired config, And that was like something that wasn't up to their standards. Like, sure, he let the team down or whatever, but then behind the scenes, they're doing shady shit, like the whole Hunden thing that we discussed, right? So that's not beneath them. Like, that's fine. Casper Hvit is not going to get fucking fired for that. They're not letting him go because he's so fucking brilliant at his job. But no, a config, this is where we draw. It reminds me of this fucking shit now with the Grizzlies and Dylan Brooks. Like, yeah,
What sport is this? Is
basketball.
this baseball?
A player
Oh, okay.
talked a lot of trash to to LeBron, right? You know who LeBron James is, at least.
I know who LeBron is.
And then
he was in that Space Jam movie.
Yes, and then he kind of poked the bear, and gave him extra motivation, and then they got fucking destroyed by the Lakers. They lost like by 40 points in the elimination game, and now the team fired this guy. They're not going to renew him under any circumstance. Because he probably, they feel like he hurt the team with that sort of trash talk and he couldn't back it up on the court, right? But meanwhile, their star point guard was recorded with a gun in a strip club, doing, I don't know what, and he was only suspended for a couple of games. Obviously, depending on who does it, the standards are not the same, right? Which is just bullshit. So yeah, I wanted to just talk about that real quick. And another thing, because I know we're short on time, unless anyone has anything more to say on the Astralis topic.
No, I don't have a lot. I agree with the sentiment.
The other one was going to be, the news of Anders and Henry pairing up.
Jason, how do you feel?
What?
How does Jason feel?
Yeah. How do you feel, Jason?
I'm happy for my boy. I'm happy he's
Which one?
found some. Both of them, really, actually. Now, yeah, that's a good point. Now, both of them. I mean, I guess this is Anders and I had a conversation coming into this year, and just had a chat about feeling a sentiment that it was kind of sort of I guess time to explore some other options. We ended 2022 feeling like that we weren't in a super high demand as a pairing, and if you look at that as a product, nobody was buying the product that we were really putting out there. So we kind of opened up the idea of going and casting with different people. So I know he's been trying to figure out who exactly he wants to pair up with, and obviously Henry's fucking awesome. So that's cool. I think it'll be fun to watch.
Who's keeping the on
kids?
fire handles at the divorce? Is it?
I think it was amicable enough that we both get to keep
okay.
it.
All right.
Yeah.
You still get
I haven't used the on fire
the
branding
graphics.
in a while though. It's the email address, but it's it's not in the Twitter handle for quite some time now. So
Yeah. Okay.
Anders
All
can
right.
have it.
All right. Fair enough. Janko, did you have anything that you wanted to say about this
Yeah,
union?
I wanted to talk about a couple of things. To be honest, it's not really related to the two of them and that stuff. I'm happy for them, that they paired up. I think both are amazing casters, right? And it's actually kind of ridiculous that we have probably at this point 4 or 5 caster pairings in CS that could cast an arena playoff game and make it sick. I don't think any other game has that sort of privilege, so I think people should appreciate that. But I was going through, for whatever reason, the Reddit comments about it, and maybe some of the comments were on Twitter, and there's so many unreasonable comments about different things. And I realized obviously the thread people mentioning, oh, Moses, what's happening with Moses? Then a guy replies, I could maybe see him pairing up with Bardolph, obviously not knowing, the history behind everything. And then it's people go into that whole situation around PGL again. And then you have a person someone links a comment from that old thread. I go into that, and of course, still unreasonable things being said by people who are commenting that they don't know either of the people. They weren't there. They don't know what the situation, what actually happened. And then I read a comment about this. It's when someone didn't know if Jason was serious or not, if he was bantering or not. And then a guy comments, any other person, I'd say this was banter, but Moses is known to act on his emotions based on his Twitter. LOL. It's that's the most.
It's the opposite of Jason.
It's the actual polar opposite of who Jason is and what
That's
he's
he's describing me there. Why is he?
Or Trace,
why is he
potentially.
Yeah. He's mislabeled you, Jason.
Or me.
I know.
It's basically
It happens.
everyone except for Jason. Jason is the guy who all of us, both me and Chad, have had this happen multiple times. We were sitting in the green room or something.
It talks us off the
and
ledge.
something happens, and I want to tweet something real bad because someone is talking shit or about this player or that team or this guy. And Jason is like, Jason, what do you think? Jason's like, count to 10, take a deep breath, and like see if it's worth it. Like after that, and of course, it's never worth it. He's absolutely right, and saved probably a lot of people's careers a couple of times when that happened. But so to see people like build these opinions and like push some of these narratives, it's so ludicrous. And like I know we all probably think a little bit like you don't want to get involved in it. It's not worth it, right? These people really don't know what they're talking about. But actually, if some of this stuff like gains a lot of traction, and then it happens, something that happened to like Semler a couple of years back, or Henry, or or maybe Anders, like these circle jerks of, oh yeah, this guy is washed up, or this guy doesn't care, or this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like I know it impacted those guys mentally and had it was a factor in their decision to maybe take a break from casting or tone it down or whatever else, and that sucks, because like then it does become a little bit of a problem. Another thing as well is I'm reading like people's like opinion, and like Bardolph is so amazing because this one time when I asked him for an autograph in the arena, he actually like did the extra step, turned around and signed it and talked to me for like 1 minute, and the other one actually is that actually triggered me more was about Henry, and like, oh, I ran into him at like the hotel after the game, and like he was very, what's the word to use, like not offhandish, I don't know, like he wasn't like, all fucking sunshine and rainbow, or all like, he was very, I don't know, dude. It's like you're coming to a person at their like sort of, I don't want to say private place. It's like a hotel. The point being, like, it was just a day at the tournament. Who knows what could have, like, this is also a human being, right? He's not just Henry G, the caster. I'm not just YNK, the analyst. Like, I have, you have your own life, things that are happening. Like, maybe it was a bad day at work. Maybe there was some shit going on that you didn't even notice that like impacts you and like puts you in a bad mood for the day. And of course, it's a part of our job. Also, we're public personalities in a sense, and that shouldn't be an excuse to you're not going to tell someone, hey, dude, fuck off. Like, of course, like you're always going to give anyone that comes to you, I'm going to say, hey, how's it going? Answer a couple of questions or whatever it is. Have like a normal chat. But I'm not always going to be fucking over the moon about it. Maybe I will seem a little bit, in a bad mood. Maybe I'm fucking tired, man. Maybe you came to me on the 8th day of a tournament where I'm doing 2 best of 3s every day, and I'm sorry that I wasn't maybe how you expected it to be, and, or on the broadcast, but I'm not a bad person because of that. I'm just a person, a human being, right? So this is like the ways like people form these opinions is, I don't want to say insane, like that's me taking it too far, but it's like unreasonable. Like your expectations are too high, and to form this much vitriol about one person and to put another person on a pedestal because of it, it's not fair and it's not realistic. You would be surprised how much some of the people that you guys put on these pedestals and that are so in the public forum are so nice or whatever, how they are actually behind the scenes. You would be surprised. So maybe just give people like the benefit of the doubt, both in a positive and a negative way.
Don't you think though, like this is a slight step to the right, but still in the same direction? Like we're still walking side by side here. Don't you think with what we do by like doing a podcast like this, or I don't know, the other ways that we can be involved within the community through forms of content or broadcasts or things like that, that we're opting to kind of put our signal out there a little bit louder, and part of that, like, I'm not saying we forfeit the right to be in a bad mood. What I'm saying is we forfeit a right to control the conversation about us, like, because people are going to say whatever people are going to say. It's like a restaurant review. Like you and I could go to the same restaurant in 2 separate days, and I have a server that's having a bad day, so my restaurant experience is bad, and you're having a server who's having a great day, and your restaurant experience is fantastic. Like we both went to the same restaurant, but we had uniquely different experiences. Like that's the same with like how you meet people, and that's how you perceive people with like what state of mind you were in at that time, like
Yeah,
through your eyes.
I think that's fair, and I think you're spot on. And I like to think that with this podcast, for example, we're able to showcase a bit more of just our personalities and how we are. Right? Obviously, the broadcast, it's an
But
official
that's why we try
broadcast,
and
and
be pretty honest with things,
yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
about how we feel about things, or like a bit more personal stuff to kind of.
Exactly, but
It's
the difference here is what you're saying. You're correct, right? And the only the slight difference between and restaurant review is a good analogy. But the difference is like if I go once and the restaurant is like on a good or whatever voice, or I'll go once and I'll be disappointed. I'll probably go back again just to see if it's not a one off. So the same thing is this, like even if I meet a person and they're a bit maybe even like borderline rude, or they don't really seem like my type of a person, I'll say okay, this was the first interaction. Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe this was this. Maybe this was that. I won't immediately go. And when someone asks me about them, I'll say, "Ah, man, that guy's an asshole." Like, "Oh yeah, I had a terrible experience with him." Right. So that I think that's like the crux of my point was probably that, like, and I know that maybe I think I'm just ranting and it doesn't make much sense, like, right? Because it's also like, well, someone won't get a chance to run into one of the casters 10 times, so it's, and that's why we're aware of that. It's like this for a lot of people, this is like the one interaction. That's why you go out of your way most of the time to be like nice, or like
Positive.
have like a genuine conversation with someone, because we wouldn't
well,
be
I'm
able
very
to do
rarely
what
in
we
a
do and live the
rush.
lives we live without the fans, right? So, and we're just the same. Like, we're just a couple of guys, like, also watching the game and talking about the game. It's like we're the same, pretty
I
much.
uh,
So,
I remember I was walking to work when we were doing it in Malta down at the hotel, and I was walking, and a guy on a scooter went past me at the top of a hill, and he like, went past, and then got my headphones in, and I hear a yell, and I turn around, and he's like, "Oh, Sponge." I'm like, "Hey." And it's just this guy. He's like, "Oh, hey, like I watch Counter Strike. I didn't know you lived in Malta." I was like, "Yeah." And then I just sat there and spoke to him for a couple of minutes and walked off. And it's like that was that guy's interaction with me, right? But that for me was just like a human interaction. Like
I'll,
I've
yeah,
just fucking.
I'll tell you a story, man. Like, I think Jason was maybe there, maybe not. It was like an early DreamHack winter, so maybe not. Like, maybe I think it was the 2015 one when the Richard Loda thing happened, right? And for me, I'm still new. It was one of my first events as a full analyst. Like, I got my first Reddit thread. I was like feeling great, and we're sitting. I think it was actually the day it was maybe the final day, or I think it was the last day, and we're at the hotel. Like in Janko, and it's like me, Duncan, Richard, maybe Sam, like a couple of like 5, 6 of us, 7 of us. We're sitting at the table, and we were having like some beers, and we were just talking because the after party was somewhere else. It was a bunch of people. We were tired. We didn't want to go there, so we were just hanging out, like, just chilling after the event. And some guy comes in, like a fan, and he's a little bit drunk, and he like kind of just comes in and is like oh, Thorin, like, great to meet you, man, like, something, and like ask him a question or whatever and something like that. And Duncan was just sort of like, hey, like, I'm having a conversation with my friends, like, basically just sort of brushed him off, not really in a rude way. I mean, as nice as Duncan can be. But, it was just basically just kind of saying, hey, this is like sort of my time, like our time hanging out. Like, I don't really want to get into that conversation. I think he even maybe like answered his first question, or like just said, hey, like, nice to meet you. But then when this guy kept pushing to actually have a conversation with him, he was like, hey, we're having a conversation right here. And for me, it was a little bit like sort of eye-opening, that because it did make sense. It was kind of rude of the guy to just, you can obviously see that we're talking into something. He's not just standing by the side, and you can like sort of approach him. So you're like kind of intruding in a sense, which again is also okay in the grand scheme of things. But it's also within Duncan's right at that time to like kind of sort of, okay, I talked to you a little, and That's it. That's fine. And that guy will probably go on and say, "Oh, this guy's a cunt." You know.
I see what you're
So-
saying. Yeah. But
Yeah.
that's when there's like different. I think some people have different reads of scenarios, right? So you know, this is interacting as people. It can be difficult to traverse sometimes, and we all make boo boos, don't we, Jason?
We do. I almost made one last night. You'll love this.
Okay.
I got back in that Reddit thread, the Stockholm thing popping off again. I was
Fuck,
a
I know
little...
you guys are reading. I've gone off the reading. All right.
Well,
I'm
I mean,
listening.
I popped in there just to like see what was what. See, because like these are the threads. This is the frustrating. These are the threads where like you want to go
I'm
in and
gonna
you
go
want to see
find
like
it
people
now.
saying. You want to see people saying like happy things about your colleagues and your friends, or like I want to see people get excited for like Henry coming back and doing more casting and pairing up with Anders, obviously, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're everything's going good, and then you get to a point where you're the one getting fucking dumpstered for some reason, and people calling me shady rat.
Catch 'em straight.
But anyways, I fucking typed up like a 2-page response, like an actual for like a Reddit post about the entire Stockholm situation, just laying out all the fucking details, and just getting into it with the intention of getting it behind me. And I was the one who had to get talked off the ledge. I was the one who had to reach out to some people and be like, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? Do I post this? Is it worth it? And I was the one being talked off the ledge. And I was in a bad mood. So I was like really wanted to go at it and get stuck in. And as I'm sitting there being told like this was, you know, this isn't really going to accomplish anything. It's probably just going to make things worse, blah, blah, blah. It's not worth it. I was just sat there and I was like, this is exactly what I fucking sound like every time the guys want to post a tweet. And it's fucking annoying. I was just like, just please just unleash me. Just let me go. Please, just let me have it. And I ended up just deleting the whole thing. But it was like a nice little therapy, like diary session where I just got all of it off my chest for that in that moment.
Yeah, well, this is the thing as well. Like some people with the first impression of when they saw you on air or heard you doing your thing or saw you in a video as well, maybe they didn't like the thing you did or so, and you know that also sticks.
Yeah,
that
first
people,
impressions are really hard to get over.
Yeah, like there's people who like, you know, for whatever reason, this is the bit that like for me the drama and like the behind the scenes and like the politics type of stuff, that's one thing. But when someone like actively doesn't like what you do as a job and like you're trying to be good at it and put like effort into it and are giving it your, you know, your everything, and someone like just doesn't like the way you say something, it's like, man, like fuck, that sucks that somebody just like has boiled me down to like that and decided like that I suck because of that one thing that they like,
because
what we do
a
is
phrase
subjective,
I
right?
use because it's like
it's
you're
not
just like, oh, I can't do anything.
Yeah, it because it's not. This is like I can't. This is like, you know, like a dancing competition. It's subjective. The judges, you know, they might like the zazz of this a little bit more than the zazz of that. It's not technical. It's not like I can lift, you know, 100 kilos or something like that. Like we can't quantify it. Like some people will like the zazz I'm throwing out. Some people won't. They'll like the Ziz, R.I.P. Ziz. Don't know if you guys remember Ziz.
Yeah.
He was a prolific Australian gentleman. But yeah. Jason, don't you have to go?
Yeah, I was about to say that this might be a good point to wrap it up because I got my heart out. I got to leave in 20 minutes and I have to shower still.
Oh, you're in a bit of strife, I would say.
It's okay. I can. It's not like a. Yeah, but yeah, I'm at the point where I need to rush.
All right, I
Let's
think
get out of
Cool.
here.
strong episode
Well-
for an 8:30 a.m. start time.
I'm
proud
going
of
back
us.
to bed.
Oh my
Started out with
goodness.
Backstreet Boys and it ended with a nice something.
Dance. Bye.
GG's.